Panthers. We'll talk with Brogan Houston about that and about the upcoming NHL draft and the contracts, the entry-level contracts that the Utah Mammoth have extended to some prospects. Brogan Houston joins us in half an hour. You might not have seen it, but one of the modern dynasties in college sports was knocked off just a few days ago, and we'll talk about that and compare them to the other modern dynasties in sports. That's coming up in 45 minutes. There's a big opening in New York City. Rafael Barlow is going to stop by at 1 o'clock, and we'll take a look at the Austin Ainge hiring, if that makes any difference on how the Utah Jazz decide to use pick number 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Spent a lot of time talking about that hire yesterday, so we're only going to touch on it pretty briefly today. We're getting close to football season. We're 87 days away from the Utah football season kicking off in that night game against UCLA. Hopefully your summer countdown is filled with things that will distract you from just waiting. And you get a little bit of a sunburn, a little bit of a suntan. Get out on the water if that's what you're into. Get up to the high altitude. I hope you see lots of animals. I hope you catch lots of fish. I hope your summer is going to be incredible. We're going to be here with you for the whole summer and trying to keep you entertained as often as you could tune in. Young Zach is behind the glass today, producing in the stead of James Peterson, who's got far more important things on his mind today. Exciting times for the Peterson family. I'm not giving any details that don't belong to me, but it's a good time for James Peterson and his family. Everyone, extend your thoughts, your prayers, your good energy, whatever it is you do towards James and his wife and the rest of that Peterson clan. Young Zach, what's up?
What's up? I haven't been on your show in a while.
It's been a long time.
I know.
What have you been doing?
Been working, my other job, my sushi gig. Just taking care of my dog, doing some stuff around the house for my family because they're trying to sell the house, and just been helping out a lot around that kind of area right now.
All right. Love it. Love to hear it. All right. So Zach will be with us for the next 3 hours. He'll be getting everyone connected when we have our guests on. I wanted to start the show today. I teased it in the little show preview that plays during the drive and through the night and through the morning or whatever. The projections, the expectations for the Big 12 football conference are widely varied this year. And we saw a little bit of that last year when Utah was making its first foray into the Big 12 conference. But there was a pretty strong consensus that Utah was going to be either the best team in the conference or the second best team in the conference. And we know, much to our chagrin, it did not work out that way, largely because of the injuries, almost wholly because of the injuries, if you ask me. And this year is a lot different. I gave you the win totals, a couple of weeks ago. Vegas thinks that there's no great team in the Big 12 conference. In fact, their highest win total, if I want to refresh the memory here, 8.5. There were a couple teams that were projected to win 8.5 games this year. You look at the Big 10 powers, you look at the SEC powers, you look at the favorites in the ACC, and we're talking 9.5 games. So there's a lot of uncertainty around how the power balance is going to play out in this Big 12 conference. And Las Vegas is a great place to start when you're trying to figure out, well, okay, where's the opinion settling? Right now, you can get plus 1,200 odds on Utah or TCU winning the Big 12 championship. Now, you look at both of those teams, very well coached teams, teams with some talent, teams with some questions, certainly. Plus 1,200 that's healthy. It's a healthy little bonus to your life for entertainment purposes only. Like, that's a favorable underdog bet if that's where you're going. Of course, that's to win the Big 12 championship. So if you think Utah is just going to be good, not great, or you think the parity in the conference is the enemy of Utah rather than the friend of Utah, not worth your time, not worth your thoughts. Iowa State actually has also moved up to that same number. More importantly, more interestingly for me, at the top betting odds belong to 3 teams: Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech. Now, these are Vegas odds. These are not the expert projections, if you want to call them that. This is not the Big 12 Media Day poll. We're going to get that in about a month. We'll be down in Dallas, or I guess it's Frisco, Texas?
I think it's Frisco.
Yeah, at the team facility, at the Star, as Jerry Jones built his little headquarters down there. That's where Big 12 Media Days is going to take place over the course of 2 days, July 8th and 9th. We'll speak with all of the Big 12 coaches, many of the Big 12 players. We'll get the official poll, media poll results, etc. So you're just over a month away from people coming out on, all right, who do we actually think is going to win this conference? And it's going to come down to probably those 2 or 3 teams. I think BYU will get a little bit of love, as they should. There's a lot of uncertainty, and when there's uncertainty around a quarterback position, that's as bad as it can get for a team when you're talking about projections at least. So that probably hurts BYU's chances in being picked as a favorite. We all know that being picked as a favorite is worth nothing. Kyle Whittingham has been saying this to you for years. Urban Meyer said it to you before that. Ron McBride said it to you before that. Expectations, preseason predictions, selecting a team as the preseason favorite or a guy as a preseason all-conference, a preseason all-American, it's nothing more than a compliment. Compliments are not concrete. They are thoughts. They are invisible butterflies that dance in the wind. They don't actually mean anything. And we've seen Utah on the good and the bad side of that, right? I think Utah thrives more as an underdog, which is why this role this year, I think I'm more optimistic than a lot of people are, because you've got that chip back on the shoulder, firmly on the shoulder. We as a collective Utah community, Utah football community, Utah fan base, we got to a point, and let's admit it to ourselves, we got to a point where we were feeling pretty entitled to the respect and the almost deference of a Big 12 conference that pushed back on that hard. And I know that the obnoxious vocal minority does not represent the Utah fan base at large necessarily, but even those of us who are trying not to be obnoxious about it, in our heart of hearts, we're just like, yeah, like Utah should be the best team in this conference and the best program year in and year out in this conference. We were feeling ourselves after that Pac-12 run, and, oh, yeah, last year stunk, but it was just because of injury situations. And, of course, this past year stunk again because of injury situations. But there was that whole thing where we were like, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. Utah, in its first year in the conference, should be picked to finish first, should be picked as the conference champions. And you're welcome, Big 12, that we are gracing you with our presence. And, of course, the season ended up being a rude welcome for a lot of reasons, much to the pleasure of the opposing fan bases, much to the dismay of the Utah fan base. But it sets up a really good dynamic for this year where you're going to be overlooked and you're going to be underestimated by a lot of the teams that thought what you brought last year was representative of what this program really is. And most of us know that that's not the case. In some ways, what you got from Utah football last year is like the most boiled down, distilled, it's the crust on the lasagna pan of what Utah football is when Kyle Whittingham's darkest dreams come true. It's that. It's a team that's got a great defense, and that great defense just can't hold the line because it takes too long. Your offense gives you nothing, etc. We're heading into a year where there's a lot of teams that are just like, yeah, that's Utah. They're not that good. They've never been that good. They thought they were so awesome, and we knew better, and we've been right. Okay. So now it's up to Utah. The onus is on the Utes to prove that that is not the case, that last year is a bad representative sample of what Utah football actually looks like. And, Arizona State knows better. Colorado knows better. BYU knows better. Texas Tech doesn't know any better. Kansas State doesn't know any better. And those are two of the three teams that are picked very high on people's preseason predictions. And the question I had today, and I guess I need to type it up on a Twitter poll. In the Big 12, it's interesting because do you think it's easier to be a team getting good and win a championship? Staying good, and good's the wrong term. Making the jump from good to great the first time, the first year, or back to great. Is that easier, or is it better to be the team that just has to stay great in order to win a conference championship? Because there's an argument to be made that it's harder to stay great than it is to get great. And Arizona State was not thought of highly heading into last year. You will remember very famously that they were picked to finish last in the conference. Spoiler alert, they did not. Arizona State won the Big 12 conference last year in a year where it was pretty similar, I think, as a league to what we're going to see this next year. Minus, you're not going to have a Heisman Trophy winner in the Big 12 conference most likely this coming year. There's going to be a little bit less attention paid to the circus in Boulder this year because Shador's not the QB. Travis Hunter is not the incredible, dynamic, all-everything, once-in-a-lifetime unicorn-style player. And right now, the Big 12 odds say Arizona State or Kansas State or Texas Tech are most likely to win. Baylor and BYU come in next. Kansas is right after them. TCU and Utah are on the next tier along with Iowa State. Colorado, nobody thinks can do it. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, nobody thinks can do it. Cincinnati, UCF, way down there. Houston, way down there. Arizona, dead last in the betting odds. But look at what I'm saying. Arizona State is a team that people are saying, all right, I think they can stay good. They can stay great. Kansas State has got to climb back up. They've got to make a jump. To refresh your memory, Kansas State last year was 5-4 in conference play. They were 9-4 overall. It's a very respectable season. They were great at home. They were 5-1 at home last year. They were 3-3 on the road, and they won their bowl game. So Kansas State, they've got some continuity at the quarterback position. They've always got a good offensive line. They usually have a pretty good running back or a running back duo. Kansas State, people are saying, we trust that this is a well-coached team with an experienced quarterback, and we think they're going to jump back from being a solid team to being a great team. Arizona State, of course, 11-win season, 7-2 in conference, 6-0 at home. BYU, 7-2 in conference, 11-2 overall, 5-1 at home. Iowa State was the third-place team. Colorado was the fourth-place team. Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, what do you mean? So the projections, the prognostications, and again, this is Vegas. Experts might feel a different way. Analysts might feel a different way. I feel a different way. But the numbers say we expect Arizona State to be able to maintain the greatness they achieved last year. They lost Cam Scatterbo. They brought in a couple interesting transfers. They've got a wide receiver that a lot of people think is going to be a first-round draft pick. They've got a quarterback who magically went from being like, oh, he's a nice little player. Levitt went from being, oh, he's a nice little player, to most people have him on their list as a top 5 quarterback in all of college football this year. And beyond that, he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in all of college football this year on an NIL front, at least on a reported NIL front. That's according to On3. So the trust seems to be there after a 1-year sample size. Hey, we like this Kenny Dillingham cat. He's ignited the enthusiasm in the Valley like he told us he would. And look what he did last year. We think he can maintain that, even though he lost his best player, by far his best player, lost him. We think he's still going to be okay. Lost the best offensive lineman as well. Still think he's going to be okay. All right. I'll get on board with that. I'm a big Dillingham fan. I think he's the right guy to be leading that program. So, yes, I will get on board with that. But when you say we also think that Kansas State belongs in that same conversation, you're expecting Kansas State to win effectively 3 more games than they did last year. They got to jump from good back to great. Texas Tech, 6-3 in conference last year, 8-5 overall. Your conference record, of course, matters more for this particular exercise. And Texas Tech is a team in this log jam of talented teams in the Big 12 Conference that Vegas and the numbers are saying the money they spent is going to pay off. Texas Tech going into the transfer portal and adding, I think we looked at this, of the 100 most important transfers in college football, the list that ESPN put out, I think like 7 of them were from another school to Texas Tech. I think the Big 12 Conference only had 12 or 13 total on that list, if I'm remembering correctly. So do you trust the team to stay good or to make the jump from good to great? And where do you put Utah in that category? Is Utah a team that needs to stay good and get better luck with injuries? Or is Utah a team that needs to go back from being bad to good? I am not of the opinion that you have to reinvent the wheel with Utah football. Your offense is going to be completely different. You've changed that side of the football. And I'm fine with it. I'm excited about the possibilities here. Like I said all last season, I don't know how necessary that is if you're talking about a healthy Utah football offense, what we thought it was going to be. I think that entire conversation around Ludwig and obviously the conversation about Rising and around Keithy and all that, like with better health, that whole thing changes. The idea, first of all, the projections this year changed drastically. And that whole conversation last year is one where we actually get to evaluate how good the coaching is. You didn't get to really have an honest look at it a season ago because, as I have made the point many times, when you take the best tools away from any craftsman, the job that they do is going to look worse, a lot worse. Run the experiment. If any of you have like a landscaper that comes to your house and mows your lawn and trims your bushes, weeds your gardens, go out there one day and just be like, hey, I'm gonna pay you double this week. I know that already I've lost you on this experiment idea, but just stick with me for the analogy. You're a great gardener. You're a great landscaper. I appreciate the work you do for me. This week, I want you to do all the work with only hand tools. I don't want you to have anything gas-powered or electric-powered. And I want you to do it as much as you can of it in the same amount of time. And then evaluate what the job looks like after that hour or 2 hours that they normally spend at your house. Evaluate what the job looks like when the weed trimmer was no longer an electric or gas-powered weed trimmer. The lawnmower is now a push mower, right? The one with the wheel. Zach, have you ever even seen one of those like that your grandpa had to use, the one that's not gas-powered? It's just a wheel of blades, and you push it?
I think I have, actually.
Okay, all right. I'm proud of you for knowing what that is.
Because when my grandpa passed away back in 2017, and my dad, he was from Ohio, right?
Okay, all right.
So he went there to help with my aunt to clean up that house and get my grandma out to Fresno where she is now.
Okay.
And he's like, guys, look at this. I'm like, whoa, what is that? And he's like, it's a lawnmower.
It's like an old school lawnmower?
It's like an old school lawnmower.
I love that.
But
all right, so you have seen one, all right?
Yeah,
so,
I've seen one.
So now I'm telling people, give your landscaper, give your gardener, give him that instead of a gas-powered Toro and see what the lawn looks like when it's over, right? You're not going to evaluate that craftsman on that job. You're just not. You're going to say, it looks fine. You only got half of it done. It doesn't look great this week. And, the edge, You didn't have your power edger, so the edge doesn't look good. My grass is growing over onto the sidewalk. But you would realize, I hamstrung you. I took away your tools. So I wouldn't expect that the results would be the same. That's what Utah offense had last year. And I know that there's a further, there's a deeper conversation about like, well, why when your starting quarterback goes down is then the cupboard empty? We didn't think it was, people. Every single one of us this time last year thought that the backup quarterback for the University of Utah was the next big thing at the University of Utah.
Right.
All of us thought that Isaac Wilson was that dude. And my sincere hope is that eventually he grows into being that dude. But he wasn't last year. So now we don't know if Utah football needs to get back to being great, go from good to great, and more pointedly, unhealthy to healthy, and then everything's fine? Or is this a Utah football team that needs to go from being mediocre to bad back to good? Because that's a really tough leap.
Yeah, it definitely is a really tough leap.
If I thought that Utah football was bad, and this year, okay, you got to make them good again, I would be worried. I would be so concerned about what this season looks like if I thought that Utah football had truly lost its way or that the support wasn't there from an NIL perspective. And look, you're probably right now on the NIL front at Utah, you're probably middle of the pack in the Big 12 conference at best, which puts you at like, I don't know, 50 or 60 in the nation kind of numbers, like right in the middle, hopefully above the true like middle, but barely above the true middle. That doesn't concern me as much as it would if this was not a Kyle Whittingham, Morgan Scalley developmental type program. I realize you got less time. You have less opportunity to develop these players now. But there's guys on the team right now that you look at and you say, but it's still working at Utah. All right? It's still happening at Utah. Is college football a mess? Yes. Is the transfer portal a plague upon all of our expectations and our ability to prognosticate what happens in a season? Yes, it is. Is it still possible that a guy can end up playing his entire career in your program? Of course. And that when he shows up, he's a good player. When he leaves, he's a great player. He's an NFL player. Yes. All right. Utah is still doing that. That alchemy still exists with Utah football. If I didn't believe that to be true, I would be looking at these Vegas numbers and I'd be saying, all right, well, Arizona State has to stay good if they're going to win a Big 12 championship. That's tough, but attainable. Kansas State and Texas Tech, they got to go from good to great if they want to win the Big 12 championship. Again, that's tough, but it's achievable. BYU, I know people don't like to hear it. BYU's got to stay great. They were great last year. They were a really, really good team last year. If they want to win a Big 12 championship, they were obviously in a position to do so last year. A bounce here, a penalty there. Their season looks different. I know that. But for BYU to win a Big 12 championship this year, it's an attainable thing. The leap, the gap between what you were last year and this year, not overly significant if you want to win a Big 12 championship. And I think that is true of Utah football as well. A lot of publications don't feel that way. Vegas doesn't feel that way. But it's a health conversation, and that means a little bit of a luck conversation, which Vegas punishes luck. It's more that conversation than you got to figure it out. You have to learn how to coach again. You got to learn how to win again at the University of Utah. I'm just not there yet, guys. And I get it. We're the home of the Utes. It's my alma mater. I tend to have rose-colored glasses on every now and again. But from a realistic standpoint, the only thing that is a true indictment of your ability this year, the only really mega huge question mark this year, is your wide receiver room. And I get that's a big one, but wide receiver is also the second easiest, maybe easiest position to plug and play, to get a young freshman to get a guy out of the transfer portal, someone who came from a different system, and just drop him in and let him succeed. Wide receiver is, I think, either the easiest or the easiest position to do that at. So do I trust this team to have an elite, top of the conference, top of the nation wide receiver room? No. Do I think you can win a Big 12 championship without having that? Yes. Tell me what you think. 877-353-0700. Does Utah need to go from bad to good to great? Like, what is the leap we're actually asking for here? Because bad, I don't think that their starting point is even mediocre. I think that Utah football's starting point, even when you compare last year, they weren't a bad football team. They were an injured football team. They were a disoriented football team. They were a football team whose morale and confidence was low. Those things are all fixable with good health. And it might be an unreasonable thing for me to ask for, good health, over the course of a Utah football season. The last 2 years, you haven't had it. Insanity is expecting that, the same process will lead to a different outcome. They've looked at everything. I can't tell you how many people up there I've talked to about, well, what about the cleats? Is that a problem here? We've looked at that. We don't think that's it. We don't know, but we don't think that's it. All right, well, what about like the post-practice training? You guys are jumping in the ice tubs. Is there something there that needs to be reevaluated? Yeah, we've looked at all that. What about the nutrition? We've looked at all that. What about the weight training program? We've looked at all that. We've tweaked things. They don't do it the same way we used to do it 20 years ago. They don't. It's the same guys. It's Doug Elisaya and his assistants and Argus and those guys. They're the same dudes that have been there for Kyle Whittingham's entire tenure for the most part. But they don't do it the same way because there's new information. They've learned new things. The equipment's better. The weight training equipment is better. I don't think Under Armour's better than anything. I don't. I think that might be part of your problem. But, again, that's not why Cam Rising's finger got bent all the way back to his elbow. So you can't blame cleats on something like that. There's a luck equation, as all of you are well aware, and I'm looking at what Vegas says and what some of the experts are saying about the Big 12. Oh, it's Arizona State's conference. Oh, it's Kansas State's conference. Oh, it's Texas Tech's conference. Oh, it's BYU's conference. You know what? I have a belief that Baylor's going to have a great year. There's a lot of scattered opinions out there, and there are the occasional, sleeping giant in Utah. That's where I stand. That's where I net out. The more I look at it, even when I'm trying to take off my fan hat, my alma mater hat, I'm looking at it, I'm just going like, there's a lot of people in the Big 12 right now who think that Utah's a bad football program.
I don't think they're
who think that Utah's an overrated football program. There are a lot of fan bases and even probably teams and opposing coaching staffs that look at it and say, like, these guys aren't that good. The Pac-12 must have really sucked if these guys were running things for the last couple of years. I don't think it. I know that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Big 12 observers that feel that exact way about Utah. And I think that this is a year where maybe they get a rude awakening. Devin Dampier's going to be a good player. More importantly, Wayshawn Parker and this offensive line are going to put something together that is at least a service to the defense and helps a dominant Utah defense be exactly that dominant. It's wild for me to see all the different projections. It's wild for me to see Vegas saying, we think Arizona State can do it. We think Kansas State can do it. We think Texas Tech has bought enough players to do it. We even think that BYU could pull this off. But guess what? Utah? Iowa State? TCU? The gap between the top team in the Big 12 and the 10th place team in the Big 12 conference is not big. Is an injury here, a whistle from the referee there, an ill-timed penalty flag. It's the same as it was last year, people. All right. That'll be the end of that rant, at least for now. We're going to get back into this, I'm sure, throughout the week, throughout really the summer. But right now, the top Vegas odds for winning a Big 12 championship are reflective of, we think that in the Big 12 it's possible to stay great. We also think it's possible to make a leap from solid to great. We don't think it's possible to make a leap from you had bad injury luck last year to now you're back and you can win a championship. And that, to me, is an underestimation of Kyle Whittingham, Morgan Scalley, Jason Beck, and more importantly, the player personnel. I'm talking about Smith Snowden. I'm talking about Lomu. I'm talking about Fano. I'm talking about Lander Barton. I'm talking about Jonnu Hall. I'm talking about Dallas Vakalahi. I'm talking about all those guys. There's a lack of belief externally. Hopefully not from you. 877-353-0700. Love to hear from you. I also put a poll question out. It's not really a poll question. I also put a question out. What is the secondary sport that you want to see your football recruits excel in as high schoolers? I'll tell you why I asked this question later in the show. But you're recruiting a college football player, and they're an all-state football guy, all right? They're an all-state quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, tight end, whatever. What other sport do you want to see on their resume that they were, he was also all-region, all-conference there. He was also an all-state basketball player. Oh, he also ran track and field, and he was, 10-3 in the 100. Oh, this guy was a state champion wrestler. There's a couple of guys right now Utah's got targeting, that coming in for visits on recruiting, that are big-time field, not track, but field, shot put and discus, right? BYU's got a guy, a running back coming in that almost broke the California state record for shot put, a running back. What's the other sport you want to see on your football stud's resume from high school? It's a big recruiting month around the country. So what else are you looking for if you're the coach? At Real OC Sports on Twitter, 877-353-0700. We'll dive back into that a little bit later on the show. Coming up next, Brogan Houston. Stanley Cup final begins tonight. Utah Mammoth have signed some prospects. They got a big draft coming up where they're picking, at least we think, number 4. We'll touch on all of it with Brogan Houston in 3 minutes. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
whips it back to the point. A spinning pass by Ian Cole finds Kesselring, drives to the net, and he scores. Michael Kesselring goes bar down, and he ties the game at 1.
Man, that's a throwback goal. Michael Kesselring against the Nashville Predators, courtesy of FanDuel Sports Network South. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 700. Brogan Houston stops by to talk some Stanley Cup Final. He's a Utah Mammoth reporter and insider at Des News. Brogan, welcome back. How are you?
Doing well, Sean. How are you?
Good. We got to update your Twitter. It says Utah Hockey Club still.
That's true. That's been on my to-do list. It's one of those things, just in the back of your mind. Like, you think about it when you're at the grocery store, and then, the next day you get to work and you don't do it. So thank you. I'll do that.
I'm actually, I say that tongue in cheek, do whatever you want. I'm actually surprised at myself because I was never really like the biggest fan of Utah Hockey Club as a name, especially on broadcast. It's a mouthful to have to say every single time, but I still find myself having to like internally correct. No, it's the Utah Mammoth now. I love the Mammoth name, but I got too used to saying Utah Hockey Club, Brogan.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've had a couple times where I've submitted an article to my editor and then had to go back and realize oh wait, I put Hockey Club in there, not Mammoth. Yeah, so it's it'll take a year or two probably, but maybe not that long, maybe a month or two. I don't know.
It'll be all right. All right, Stanley Cup Final begins tonight. We're your home of the Stanley Cup playoffs on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Panthers, Oilers. Florida has looked unbelievable. The offensive output of the Oilers has now finally gotten a little bit of support in goal especially. And this, of course, is a rematch from last year's Stanley Cup. Is the outcome similar, maybe the exact same? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think it's really a coin toss at this point. Both teams are absolute juggernauts. Pretty much all of the best players in the world are in this series. There's a few that aren't, but both teams have ample amounts of superstars. And yeah, it's just going to come down to, where does that little black thing on the ice bounce more? It's going to come down to bounces. That's probably what it's going to be.
You gave us your ballot for the Selke Trophy, and it goes to Barkov. Panthers are collecting a bunch of hardware, and maybe they're going to collect the Stanley Cup on top of it. Barkov ends up winning it. You had Sam Reinhart at the top. Tell us your process for making the ballot, for submitting the ballot.
Yeah, so that was kind of my bold ballot move this year. Was when the Panthers were in town, it kind of woke me up to Sam Reinhart as a defensive forward. I just noticed all game long, I was like, wow, Reinhart is always in position defensively to make the right play, to break up a play, to clear a rebound from the front of the net. And so that kind of opened my eyes to it a little bit. And then since then, I've just kind of been watching. Every time I watch the Panthers, I'm watching Sam Reinhart and just seeing what he does defensively. And I kind of realized I think that it could be his trophy as much as it is Barkov's. And I think that the Selke Trophy as the defensive forward of the year, or the two-way forward of the year, it's evolved to the point where it's no longer a best of the year award. It's a best in general award. So you ask anybody in the hockey world who's the best defensive forward in the league, everybody's going to say Alex Barkov because everybody else says Alex Barkov. But actually watching the hockey, I don't know. I was impressed by Sam Reinhart, and so that was my bold one this year. Somebody can probably give me a really good reason why I'm wrong, but I think 20-something other people also put him in first place. So I have a little bit of support at least.
Well, it's interesting, and I appreciate you explaining that. I appreciate you voting kind of true to what your actual thought is, because even as professional as everyone tries to be in media, people on TV shows, on radio shows, whatever. We are not immune from the groupthink that happens in sports, and it's actually it's sometimes difficult to be the dissenting opinion, even if it's not the hottest of hot takes, to just be well, it might not be Barkov for me, because a lot of people are just no, it is Barkov. Well, why is it Barkov? Like you said, well, everyone knows it's Barkov. Why does everyone know that? Well, because everyone's been saying it. That's why. It's really interesting how this happens. This happens with, Heisman Trophy odds. It happens with who's expected to win the Super Bowl, who's the best quarterback in the NFL. If you say anything besides Patrick Mahomes, people are just like, how can you even support that opinion? And so you have to come up with reasons why. So I don't know.
Exactly.
There's not even a question in there. It's just like, I appreciate that, instead of just going along with it, you're willing to stand on the business, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I will mention, too, that I had Barkov number 2.
Yeah, it's not like you don't think he's good.
Nothing against him. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I think since the last time we talked, the Mammoth have signed 3 of their young prospects to entry-level contracts. And, the 2 Russians, it seems like people think maybe will make the roster this year. And I wanted to get your thoughts on Simashev and Boot and their potential to contribute in the 2025-2026 season on the ice.
Yeah, so I really think highly of these guys. They're KHL champions, which is the second best hockey league in the world. So they have real good pro experience. This is more than guys coming out of college. This is guys that have played against grown men for years now. They also lost in the final of that league last year. So they won this year. They lost last year in the final. So these are guys with hardened experience. They're going to come in. They might not come in and be MVP caliber players right away, but they'll probably come in. They'll probably play a really good amount of games. As long as they stay healthy and don't get sent down and that kind of stuff. And I'd expect Boot to have more of an impact than Simashev. And I'll tell you why. I think that Daniil Boot is going to go into a bigger role right away. That's just kind of my speculation, but that's what they did with Logan Cooley. That's what they did with Dylan Guenther. And in both situations, the players popped off right away. They were really good offensive guys right from the minute they arrived in the NHL. And the reason that was the case was because they put them with really good line mates and gave them pretty good playing time. And so I would expect for a forward like Daniil Boot to get that same type of opportunity under the same coaching staff and the same management. And maybe he is a 30, 40 point guy this year. That's kind of my projection for him. And then, obviously evolves from there. Simashev, on the other hand, he's a defensive defenseman. So you're not going to throw him on the power play. You're not going to, give him the really tough minutes, nothing like that. You're probably going to try and ease him into the NHL game. It's a smaller rink than they play on in Europe. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, especially for a defensive player like that. But I do expect Mikhail Sergachev to kind of take him under his wing, which it seems like he already has. They've been hanging out in Russia. If you follow him on Instagram, you'll see that. So I think that he's probably going to, be similar to Maverick Lamoureux last year, where they give him chances to succeed, but they don't necessarily rely on him, if that makes sense.
How big a factor is their size? Both of these guys are like 6'5", and it felt like Utah, every time we spoke with, Bill Armstrong or Coach Bear, it felt to be like they wanted the identity of this team to be like that big, physical, nasty team, but they're not big. They could be physical, but they're not big. So how important is their size to whatever happens with them?
Yeah, no, I think that's been a priority of Bill Armstrong his entire time that he's drafted, for this Arizona-Utah team. You look at their entire prospect pool, I think there was like 1 or 2 guys that were below 6 feet, and everybody is above that, which, 6 feet is about probably the normal height, average height for a man. And most of them are above that, 6'2" to 6'5", even a couple 6'6", 6'7" guys. That's their entire prospect pool is kind of in that range. And so I think that's intentional. I think they are trying to build from the draft and build big teams. You look at some of these Stanley Cup winning teams. Florida last year, big defense. Vegas the year before, big defense. And when I say big, I mean big, strong, tall, heavy guys that can punish you physically. And so I think that's kind of what they're trying to build through the draft. They're not there yet. Obviously, their top 6 forwards, especially, are pretty small guys, most of them. But it's getting there, and by the time everybody's developed, I think they will be one of the bigger teams in the league, and that just makes you harder to play against. You take up more room in the offensive zone and in the defensive zone. you get in the way of your opponents more just because you're a bigger presence. Guys are scared when you're coming after them, because you're going to hit them and run them into the boards. And, you're big enough and strong enough to, make a bruise or two here and there. So I think that's kind of the outlook here. And I think they're doing a good job at it.
And look, Gabe Smith, big kid as well, right? I mean, he's over 200 pounds. He's 6'4", very young. So what's the timeline like on him?
Yeah, so I would expect him to go back to Moncton in the QMJHL next year. He's I believe he's 18 years old this year, so he can't play in the NHL next year. Or sorry, he can't play in the AHL next year. So his two options are either go back to the QMJHL or play in the NHL. He won't be allowed to play in the minors just because of the the NHL QMJHL agreement. After you're 20 years old, you can go to the AHL. Before that, you have to stay in your junior league if you're not playing in the NHL. I don't know if that makes sense. There's a lot of HLs in that phrase that I just said. But anyway, short story is he's not eligible to play in the AHL, so it's either pro or junior, and I don't think he's ready to turn pro yet, so he'll probably stay in junior.
3 days ago, Brogan put out an article in the Des News about the Utah locals in the NHL, and there's not a lot, right? Trevor Lewis and Ian Moore and who's one more now, right?
Ivana Walchuk,
Richard
Bachman.
There's not a lot of Utahns playing in the NHL. There's infrastructure being built and put into place as we speak to try to change this. How long do you think it's going to take before Utah becomes not only a hockey state with a hockey team, but a hockey player producing state?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've kind of been comparing it to Colorado. Colorado got a team in 1996. They had an NHL team in the 70s as well, but they lost that eventually. But they really established themselves in the NHL in 1996. And probably within the next 15 to 20 years, they were pumping out some pretty good NHL players. Jacob Slavin's probably the best out of there yet. Troy Terry's another one. Seth Jones and his brother Caleb Jones, excuse me. They've been pumping out some really high caliber NHL players that are, now kind of getting into the prime of their careers. So I'd expect it to be kind of that similar timeline for Utah. Now the population of Colorado is a little bit greater than that of Utah. So, maybe that plays a factor into it as well. But, I wouldn't expect to see a first overall pick from Utah in the next decade, but, maybe in the next 2 or 3, it's certainly possible.
All right, Brogan, before I let you go, Stanley Cup final prediction. Who wins it and in how many games?
Florida in 7, and it's going to be another 1-goal game in Game 7.
Woo-hoo-hoo. I hope you're right, man. It sounds like the NBA Finals that most people think it's not going to end up being a great series, so I hope we get one in this Stanley Cup final, and we'll be watching closely. All right.
Sounds good.
We'll have you on again before the draft, all right?
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Brogan Houston, Utah Mammoth insider, NHL insider from the Des News. Go check out that article I was just referencing, Des News Sports. The Utah natives that are in the NHL. It's a sparse population at this point, but I, like Brogan, think that that's going to grow. And I expressed my hope, I think it was last week, maybe it was Monday, that we get certain cultural demographics into hockey, namely our Polynesian brothers and sisters who have the mentality and build for it. Would be fun. All right, Hot Lunch is coming next. One of the great college sports dynasties came to a halting end right in front of our eyes this past weekend, and we didn't give it any justice. We're going to do that today on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. I don't know if you were watching. Some of us sit in front of a television while we're doing our work, and there's a lot of sports on, and so the Women's College World Series has been played over the last several weeks. Oklahoma, national power, 4-time back-to-back-to-back champions, got eliminated, and we didn't really talk about it much because there's other things going on. They were just dominant, right? And Texas Tech, in a walk-off fashion, snaps the streak, and Oklahoma will not win a national championship after 4 national championships consecutively. And, of course, you had the pandemic before that. So if you don't cancel that season, there are a lot of people think that it'd be longer than the 4. You look at the true, consecutive championships dynasties in college sports, it is very, very hard to win back-to-back-to-back-to-back. You got to go all, UCLA basketball did it a bunch of times consecutively back in the 70s. The North Dakota State football team, I think they won 5 in a row. And then someone broke the streak. James Madison maybe broke their streak. And now they're back. They've won 10 total now. But Oklahoma softball deserves a little bit of love for what they were able to build as a modern sports dynasty, because it's getting harder and harder. I know we pay more attention to basketball, football, etc. These revenue-producing sports, it's getting harder and harder, especially in the non-rev sports, to do this. Because, well, I guess it's changing now, but, you didn't have the same benefit that a lot of these football teams and basketball teams do. Oklahoma, I don't want to say the dynasty's completely over because I'm sure they're going to be back and competitive next year, but watching this team and watching some of the post-game press conferences and their head coach talking about it's going to be very strange to not be in the national championship. Letting your expectations get to that point, knowing that you are that good at what you do, that you have to at least be in the national championship game or it's a foreign experience, that is wild. That is not something that any program can relate to, except I guess if you're a Penn State wrestler, that's what you expect from yourself now. Pretty impressive stuff, not only by Oklahoma, but, of course, by Texas Tech to snap that streak. And the Red Raiders, they're expected to be really good in football because of the NIL stuff that they did. You're not supposed to say when you're a sports talk radio guy, I don't know. But I truly don't know if that oil tycoon money also extends to the softball team. I have a hard time believing that would be the number one investment point. But, man, pretty cool. You'd love to see an upset in college sports, and Texas Tech did it. We didn't give them any flowers yet, but I was fascinated to see that when you compare Oklahoma's consecutive championship dynasty to other programs, you got to go back to the 70s and 80s to find something. I think D3's had a diving team that's won 17 in a row or something like that. That's an apples to oranges comparison. We're talking about big-time college sports where there's a lot of teams dedicated to trying to beat you, to trying to dethrone you, and Oklahoma was still able to do it 4 years in a row. Whee! All right, you've heard me talking about the Steel Vault. If you haven't stopped by or scheduled your first consultation yet, now's the time to do it. 20% off. All right, thesteelvault.com, 877-9976. 801-877-9976. What's the Steel Vault? Well, it's a medical spa right in the heart of the Salt Lake Valley down in Holiday, and they have comprehensive options, comprehensive care options for you. Maybe you're worried about the hair loss. We've talked about this. You don't have to suffer through that the way that our fathers and our uncles and our grandfathers did. There are solutions now to where if your hair is thinning, if that receding hairline is receding past the point where you find it acceptable, go see them at the Steel Vault. Maybe you're just a stressed out, hard-working type individual. You got the crazy lines all over the face, the craggy forehead, and you don't want to deal with that anymore. They've got a solution for you there. I think most of us, right? I'm in my 40s now. A lot of you listening are probably at least there age-wise, or you're coming up on it fast, or perhaps you're even older than that. Your testosterone is not where it was when you were in your 20s, okay? There's now an option for you to get those levels back to, I'm not talking about like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson levels. What I'm talking about is back to a place where your body's in homeostatic balance and your weight comes down a little bit. You feel more energetic. The libido comes back. You sleep better. You feel better because you got your hormones regulated. The Steel Vault can handle all of that for you. Even if you're only looking for one of those things, go see them. If you're looking for all of those things, absolutely give them a call right now at 877-9976. 801-877-9976, or book your consultation online at thesteelvault.com. They've got a big Book Now button, and make sure you mention ESPN 700 or the Sean O'Connell Show. You get 20% off at the Steel Vault. Lots left to get to on the show today. Is Johnny Bryant going to get that Suns job? Is Johnny Bryant going to get a Knicks job? After we signed off yesterday, the New York Knicks, the same New York Knicks that were in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Indiana Pacers, whose season just ended a couple days ago, who had the best season of their entire franchise history this century, the best year in the last 25 years. And what did the Knicks do? They fired the head coach. We'll talk about whether that's a good move or a bad move, and, of course, what's next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, the Sean O'Connell Show. The NBA is wild. NBA Finals start tomorrow. Thunder, Pacers. A lot of people already being dismissive of the Pacers' chances to win a championship because of what we've seen from the Thunder, not only this season, but through these playoffs. Let them play the games. I hope we get 7. Some people think it'll be 4 or 5. In other news, a lot of folks saw it coming. We have a surprising number of hardcore Knicks fans that are somehow associated with the show or the station here at ESPN 700. Porter Larson, who produces The Drive, is a Knicks fan. Spence Checketts, who hosts The Drive, also has ties to the Knicks, of course, is his childhood team. Tony Jones, who's a friend of the program, friend of the station. He's a Knicks guy. And a lot of people thought, all right, this outcome that we just saw yesterday was maybe going to happen. I still look at it and say, how do you make it to an NBA Finals, deliver a big market team, the New York Knicks, to their best result in the last 25 years, and then get fired? The NBA, more than any other league, is not just a results-based league, but is a perception of those results-based league. And when I say perception of those results, I'm not even talking about the perception by the fan base. I'm talking about the perception in the building and with your roster. Imagine coaching a team. And if I understand it correctly, this is Tom Thibodeau's childhood team this was his dream job. Imagine coaching a team to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then that team, the players on that team, are not able to help you deliver a finals trip, not even an NBA championship, because if it were the Knicks in the finals, then the conversation would be largely the same, maybe even more pronounced, that Oklahoma City just has too much for the Knicks. But imagine taking a team to the Eastern Conference Finals, the best result they've attained since the turn of the century, and they're just like, I know it's been 3 days since you took us to this best result we've had in a long time. You fired. I'm not telling you it's the wrong move. It's just an insane reality that these coaches live with. That if your players, and he has this, Thibodeau has this reputation earned, well earned by the way, reputation for he doesn't rest his guys. He doesn't go deep enough into the bench. There's plenty of things you could criticize about why, he's throwing our guy, DeLon Wright, out there for 15 minutes a game after everyone else just gets too tired when you didn't prepare him for that through the course of the season or the playoffs. Like that's on you as a coach. So, again, I'm not telling you this is the wrong move for New York, but it's just insane. Who is it? Was it Dwayne Casey that won Coach of the Year and got fired in the same year?
I think so.
I was in the Bay Area when the Warriors were at the very beginning of what would eventually be that Warriors championship dynasty, and Mark Jackson was their coach. They were a really, really good team. They moved on from Mark Jackson because of he didn't have the same results that Thibodeau has, but because of the same thing, the ownership and the players were like, all right, he's taken us as far as we can go. This is his style gets us here. And with Mark Jackson, it wasn't to a championship. It wasn't to a Western Conference final. With Tom Thibodeau, it was to an Eastern Conference final. It was, this is the farthest we've gone. This is the best we've done in 25 years. But we acknowledge, we admit to ourselves, and we are telling our fans and we are telling the rest of the NBA that we know that you are not going to get us further than this point. That, my friends, is a sobering and scary reality. I don't feel sad for coaches when they get fired. They get their contracts bought out. They get paid sometimes not to work. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. There's a lot of pressure in the job. They sign up for it. Every single one of them is fine, all right? But it's just a crazy thing. It's a wild reality in the NBA that you can deliver those results and still have somebody tell you, I know it's better than all the coaches since Pat Riley, but it's still not good enough for me. Well, why is it not good enough for you? Well, because it's not good enough for Cat. It's not good enough for Jalen Brunson. It's not good enough. So we'll see you next time. Timothy Chalamet, he called us and said, I'm not renewing my front row season tickets if it's Tom Thibodeau again. He rides these guys too hard. He makes them too tired, and that's as far as you could go. Now, Spence said this on his show, and I don't disagree with him. If Boston stays healthy in that Eastern Conference semifinal series, we're probably having a totally different conversation altogether, and Tom Thibodeau probably got fired a couple weeks ago. Boston did not stay healthy. The Knicks advanced, and you waited until now for what a lot of people thought was an eventuality that, you've come to the end of the road here. Thibodeau's going to land on his feet. Again, I feel no sympathy. So what's next? Well, Johnny Bryant, who was named as a finalist for the Phoenix head coaching job, is being talked about as a potential new hire for the New York Knicks. I gave you the analogy to Mark Jackson and the Warriors moving from Jackson to Steve Kerr. Again, at the sort of like fledgling stages of their eventual championship dynasty, I don't feel like that's what New York is headed toward. You look at the roster that Steve Kerr took over, and you had generationally great players. I know you don't like to say that about Draymond Green in particular, but as an antagonist, as a defensive disruptor, as a versatility, I can defend 5 positions type guy, Draymond deserves his flowers there, right? And of course, I'm not talking about the best shooting backcourt in the history of the NBA. Steph Curry, the best shooter in the history of the NBA. New York doesn't have that. All right? So I'm with you if you're a Knicks fan who's like, all right, Tom Thibodeau, you can't take us any further than this. Who is going to take you further than that? It's not the same situation where Steve Kerr steps in and he's just like, all right, I have a better relationship. I'm a little bit less controversial with the way I talk to my guys. They perceive me as a little less of a hypocrite. I'm going to get the most out of these individuals, and off we go.
I think Mike Malone would be a good hire for the Knicks.
We'll see how that plays out. Mike Malone, right? I mean, Mike Malone, it was problematic in Denver. Why was it problematic in Denver? Why was Joker not like, oh, bring him back? How dare you do this? That was a very, very telling scenario when Mike Malone gets fired from a good team, a playoff-bound team, a week before the playoffs start?
It's like a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe.
And it was like, all right, guys, have fun with the interim. And we gave, a lot of respect to the way that they kind of like pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and made a deeper run than some people thought a team in that kind of leadership disarray would be able to make. The thing about the Knicks job is you have to be willing to take on the highest, most elevated and unrealistic expectations in the NBA. This is bigger than LA. This is louder and more cantankerous than Boston. And by the way, your fan base now just saw you in the Eastern Conference Final. So anything less than that is you're the problem as the first-year head coach. If I'm Johnny Bryant, I'm like, Phoenix, hire me. New York, thank you, but no thank you. And I know you can't boil it down quite that simply, and coaches are wired a little bit differently from a mentality standpoint. But Karl Anthony Towns, far from a perfect player. Defensive liability in a lot of situations. He and Jalen Brunson don't appear to play all that well together. And you traded your future for Bridges. So now what? You're going to be the coach that goes in there and works their magic and says, all right, not only am I going to get back here, but I'm going to get back here and still beat Boston, who's going to be, by the playoffs next year at least, healthier. I'm going to beat Indiana, who I don't think has any reason to be going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, I know the East is not as deep or competitive as the West is in the NBA, but that is a difficult job just because of the expectations, even before you get into, well, what are the liabilities? What are the problems on the roster? What are the issues with what I need to fix basketball-wise? Before you even get to any of that, you got maybe the worst owner in sports. You've got a fan base that not only has always been a little bit difficult, but has even higher expectations because of what the guy that just got fired was able to do. That is a scary job to take. I know you're going to get paid millions of dollars for it, but your leash is exactly one season long.
Yeah.
And if that season doesn't take you at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, then you're the failure. I'm not telling you this is not a better job or a more appealing job than Phoenix. I'm telling you that for me, it's a less appealing job than Phoenix. Because in Phoenix, although Ishbia is a weird owner as well, in Phoenix, though, you've got if Devin Booker signs off on you being hired, you know you have a young star that's with you, right? And you're playing in a deeper division and a deeper conference than you will be in New York. But in Phoenix, you're probably not going to get your head chopped off if you don't make it to the Western Conference Finals next year.
Yeah, especially with Durant and Beal. Like, that's a big three still trying to figure out everything.
I don't know if Durant is going to be there still, right? The mercenary nature of Kevin Durant. But, your point is well made that the roster doesn't suck really in either place, but the expectations are totally different.
Mm-hmm.
As is evidenced by, the results of the season. Eastern Conference Final for one, fired. Didn't make it to the Western Conference Finals in Phoenix, you got fired. In New York, you made it as far as anyone has taken this team in the last 25 years, and they still were like, yeah, but it's not going to go further than that because you wear these guys out too much.
Yeah.
You ride them too hard. And I wonder, when I say Tom Thibodeau's going to land on his feet, I really believe that. I don't know if they're, with the way the NBA has trended or is trending, I don't know if he's going to be immediately a head coach somewhere else.
Yeah.
If your reputation is among players and certainly among fans, if your reputation, more important with the players, that you're just going to go too hard for too long, you don't get to go to a team that has a star, that has influence in the front office, because that guy is going to call Jalen Brunson and just be like, he's going to call Jimmy Butler, be like, what do you think? And those guys are going to be like, man, you're going to play 41 minutes a night. It's going to suck. And you're going to make it to the end. You're going to make it to the playoffs. You're going to have shin splints. And then everyone's going to get mad at you when you guys don't make it farther. So if you're a star with any kind of influence, are you going in and saying, yeah, go ahead, hire Tom Thibodeau? I just don't know. I really am confused as to what his next move, even the possibilities are for Thibodeau, because it's not like he did a bad job in New York. He just didn't do a job that was quite good enough to get you to the NBA Finals.
Definitely.
Which, of course, is also the case with 28 other coaches in this last season.
Definitely. And, what is there, 3 openings right now in the NBA for coaches? Because it's the Grizzlies, Knicks, and Denver, right? Am I missing one?
I think that's it right now.
Yeah, that's it right now. Honestly,
no, it's Phoenix, Knicks.
Oh, yeah, Phoenix, Knicks. So there's 4.
And, wait, one of those guys just got elevated. They took the interim off of Grizzlies guy, right?
I think so. So 3. So Thibodeau did great with the Knicks for 5 years. Obviously, coaching Karl Anthony Towns again for 1 year because he was the Timberwolves coach before taking the Knicks coach job. So I think there's opportunity. Maybe it's not the right time now. Maybe in the future he might get hired again. I mean, he's been in the coaching job for a while.
In any case, fascinating development in New York where the coaching world in New York City is this tank full of sharks, and all of the sharks have a loud voice and are happy to use it. And even when you think you're above, like you're staying out of that water because of your results, even a loss in the Eastern Conference Finals can dump you back into the shark tank. It's rough. It's a terrible situation. Good for you, Tom Thibodeau, for making it as far as you did. Johnny Bryant, if you're taking that phone call and you're interviewing, he's a smart guy. He's 30, Johnny's 38, 39 years old. You got an incredible coaching future ahead of you. Your first head coaching opportunity being in that environment, that hostile press, that insane level of expectation. I mean, again, smarter man than me, especially basketball-wise. But if you're talking about mapping out your career and longevity matters to you, which I think it should to everyone in every job, that right there is a scary, scary place to start off. And they haven't offered Johnny Bryant the job as far as we know. But that is a possibility.
I got an update for you.
Okay.
The Suns just hired Jordan Ott as their coach.
When did that happen?
2 hours ago.
Oh, hey. I'm sitting here blabbing the whole morning. All right.
I know. I was looking at what are the open vacancies in the NBA right now, and then this says Jordan Ott hired June 4th. I'm like, what?
Okay, so Jordan Ott. We talked about this yesterday. Jordan Ott was one of the two finalists, and Jordan Ott, I made jokes about how Jordan Ott, he's like he's followed the Spoelstra path to being a head coach now, where he was a video coordinator. He not the college basketball star, not the guy who tried to play pro ball anywhere. There it is. The Suns are hiring Cavalier assistant Jordan Ott as a head coach. It's right. It's on the screen right in front of me. So Jordan Ott hired by the Phoenix Suns to replace Mike Budenholzer, who I think fired after the first year of a 5-year contract?
Yeah, first 5.
So I guess all the points I was making about how hostile it can be in New York, it can be equally hostile in Phoenix if they're getting rid of Coach Bud after a year. And maybe the most important thing, and I'll finish the coaching discussion in the NBA with this, maybe the most important thing about when you're coaching in the NBA is like your players get to decide whether or not you have a job. That's not true in the NFL. Your quarterback might have an influence over whether or not you have a job. I think Tom Brady got to that point. I think Aaron Rodgers got to that point. He's no longer at that point, but he got to that point at some time in his career. I'm sure if Patrick Mahomes was with somebody else and it wasn't, the most respected coach in the NFL, I'm sure Patrick Mahomes could be like, this Andy Reid guy's not working out. But it's Andy Reid. So, like, in the NBA, it's not just LeBron anymore. It's guys like Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. These guys can do it. It's guys like Anthony Edwards. He can say it.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
It's Giannis can say it. Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns can probably walk into the office and say, I'm too tired. I can't play for a guy that makes me this tired. I mean, why else do you fire someone who takes the Eastern Conference Finals? So your relationship with your players matters a lot. We talked about the Denver situation, right? Mm-hmm. If Jokic wanted you to stay as the head coach, then you're staying as the head coach.
Yeah, and then there has to be stuff that happened behind the curtains in the locker room or something like that.
Maybe I shouldn't say that because the Kroenkes are wild and they'll do whatever they want to do. I mean, the way that whole thing was perceived, or at least portrayed, was that the Kroenkes flew in on a helicopter and walked around the office that they hadn't been to for 3 months. And we're just like, I actually don't like this. I don't like the cut of your jib. You're fired. It's like, oh, all right. But then in the post-mortem, when you actually finally heard the comments from Joker, he's like, yeah, I found out after it happened, but they told me why, and I accepted it and moved on. He's a hard guy to read, though, and he doesn't strike me as someone who gets emotionally attached to anything in basketball because basketball is his job and not his passion. So would he have ever gone to bat for a coach that he absolutely loves and said, no, you can't fire this guy. I'm unhappy if you fire this guy. I can't even see Joker doing something like that. But your relationships with your players, that's what keeps you in a job.
Definitely.
Or gets you fired from a job.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe if you're Johnny Bryant, you're like, I like Jalen Brunson. We get along already. I'm going to take that job because even if I don't make it to the finals next year, my star players are still happy with me. And when general manager, team president, ownership comes down the hall and says, what are we going to do with this guy? They say, we got a good thing going here. Keep him. Wait and see what happens next year. That's not the message that was coming from players to whoever asked about Tom Thibodeau. All right, time to take a quick break here. We're going to come back. A big-time recruiting month here in June. All right, we already talked about this. I need your feedback. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. You have a big-time all-state high school football player coming in. What other sport tells you that they're going to be successful at your school? What other sport on their resume? Oh, he was an all-state volleyball player. He was an all-state basketball player. He was a wrestling state champion. This guy was a part of a 4x100 record-setting sprinting team. Whatever it is. The other sports you want to see on your high school recruit's resume. Text them to me now, 877-353-0700 or at Real OC Sports on the tweet machine. We still have Rafael Barlow joining us at 1. He's going to come in and talk about the NBA draft coming up for the Utah Jazz and, of course, the finals starting tomorrow. It's Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show continuing here on a Wednesday. All right, big-time recruits making visits around the country. We're talking the class of 2026. Your roster is pretty much set for 2025. Players are in the transfer portal, although there's a bunch of guys who have reclassified, and it's really wild to see this happening now. Mostly in basketball, but even in other sports, football too. 17-year-olds saying, no, I'm going to graduate early. I'm going to graduate this year, and then next year I'm going to be ready to play college football. Wow. Tough thing to do. I was reading some articles last night, getting ready for the show, and you have football players who are specialized in football. A lot of parents nowadays are having their players in whatever sport specialize in that sport. You get like the quarterback coach that works with your kid in the spring instead of having your kid play baseball. You get the 7-on-7 camps that go basically all year round now. Sometimes they're indoors, sometimes they're outdoors. And every coach that I have talked to, and I've talked to a lot of coaches, either privately or publicly when we ask them about recruiting philosophy, every single one says, I want multi-sport athletes. I like to look and see what guys excel in outside of football. Those skills translate, athleticism translate. Coaches are looking for athleticism. They're looking for freaks. So pretend you're that coach and tell me what other sport you want on the high school resume, or on, I guess, if you're recruiting, someone from like another school, want to have been on their resume. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. I think it does vary by position. If I'm talking about a quarterback, my quarterback running track, awesome. I want my quarterback as a thrower, though. I want my quarterback being really good at throwing the ball. If my quarterback has arm talent that makes him an elite pitcher, I might have a little bit of concern over whether or not he's thrown out his arm, but I like that, right? I'm thinking, okay, do I want the guy who just played quarterback and went to a bunch of 7-on-7 camps, or do I want the guy who helped his team win a football state championship and a baseball state championship? I'm probably going with the baseball guy. Wide receivers and cornerbacks, we hear it all the time, even on broadcasts. There's a reason why your play-by-play guy or your color analyst is going to say half the time, if it's true about somebody, runner-up in Texas in the 100-meter in high school, California state championship in the 110-meter hurdles as a high schooler. The reason they tell you that is to help give context and to explain why that kid is so damn fast. If you're talking about a wide receiver especially, and that kid's got track credentials, yes, please. Utah's got a backup quarterback / wide receiver. Nate Johnson was an elite track runner in high school. He's a track speed kind of guy. Track speed is very different than football speed. We know that. If all you're good at is track, that doesn't mean you're going to be a great football player. If you're already good at football, which of course is what these coaches are recruiting, if you're already really good at football and you're really good at track, that means you have a different level of speed when you get into the open field than even the fast football players I'm seeing on film. So obviously, track's a great one. If you're playing in the box anywhere, if you're a linebacker, you're a running back, you're a D lineman, you're a D end, you're an offensive lineman, although it's tough with offensive linemen now, I want wrestling. If you're a wrestling state champion, I'm actually going to give you a scholarship to play football as long as you're above a certain weight. Wrestling is the hardest sport to succeed in mentally that you could play in high school. If you have the toughness and the discipline and the talent and the grit to be a wrestling state champion, I could make you into a good football player if I'm a good football coach.
Yeah, one of my good buddies is over at Dickinson State, and he was a wrestler in high school as well, playing football. He got moved to D-tackle, actually, this past offseason, so he's playing D-tackle this year.
All right, and that's a great position for a wrestling state champion or a high-level wrestler to play. My best friend growing up was our high school quarterback, and he played safety, and he was a better wrestler than he was football player. He was a high school All-American wrestler. He wrestled for the best junior college, national championship junior college program, which is Northwest Wyoming at the time. He went and wrestled for them, and he was like, like many of us, football was really his first love, even though he was a better wrestler than he was football player. He ended up playing football at the University of Utah, and he was the quarterback who could play safety, who he ended up being a running back. Just a great athlete. You put those guys on your team because if you're a wrestling state champion who's above, 171 pounds, that was the weight class. I think it still is the weight class. Like if you're 171 pounds as a high schooler, that means I can get you to like 185 plus as a college student. If you're a wrestling state champ, you're on my team. as long as you don't play, I don't know, wide receiver. Offensive linemen, I said it's harder now for offensive linemen to be great wrestlers. It was a lot more common when I was going into college for a wrestler to be like, the weight limit for a heavyweight wrestler in 2002 was 265 pounds. A lot of these high school kids now, these offensive line recruits, are 290 plus as high schoolers. So you don't want them to cut weight down to 265 so they can compete and they can wrestle and they can win a state wrestling championship. Hans Olsen, our guy who works across the street, his son, Rock, amazing dude. Love the kid, right? Rock was at one point a great wrestler. Rock is now too big to be a wrestler. He's going to play offensive line. I think someday he's going to be an elite college offensive lineman. He's serving a mission first. But that kid couldn't wrestle as a high schooler because he was too big. Most of these elite high school offensive line recruits have now outgrown wrestling as a possibility. So where that would have been an answer to this question, what other sport do I want on my high school recruit's resume? That used to be a wrestling answer for an offensive lineman. Now, because the guys are so damn big, so damn fast, I want them to play basketball. I want them to have good footwork and the kind of nimble balance that basketball demands, even of really, really big guys. Our guy Jeff Schwartz, who's joined us on the show so many times, played it, a decade in the NFL. He was a basketball player basically because it helped out with that. And he was a baseball pitcher, which that would have been an intimidating prospect when you're a batter facing a guy who in high school is like 290, 300, 6'6", 6'7", 290, 300, and just hurling heat your way. My baseball career ended my freshman year of high school, but that would have been a scary thing to see.
That would be scary, honestly.
Okay, so on the text line, 7825. Offensive line and defensive line wrestling. When I transferred to Weber State, one of our D tackles, Rio Stotler, shout out Rio if you're listening, hopefully you are, was a great high school wrestler. Awesome high school wrestler. I know it was very difficult for him. Did I say 265, by the way, was the weight class? I think that's wrong. I think it was 275.
275.
265 is the MMA heavyweight limit. 275. Rio, as a high schooler, had a hard time getting down to 275. But he made it, and he did it, and he was a great high school wrestler. Ended up being an awesome defensive tackle at the college level. Our guy, Bryce Scanlon. Bryce Scanlon played at the University of Utah. He ended up transferring to Weber State also. Bryce Scanlon was an all-state football player, and he was a wrestling state champion in Wyoming. And he was like, I think, a 215-pound state champion in wrestling. Ended up being a 285-pound D tackle and an absolute beast of a man. You still see him walking around, and you're just like, all right, still in shape, cool. Just a tank of a guy. So a lot of answers coming in on the text line for wrestling, for offensive line and defensive line. Tight ends and receivers, basketball, quarterback, baseball. It's really interesting. Baseball is a thinking man's game. Baseball is like, you got to have patience. There's so much attention to detail in baseball, some strategy in baseball. It probably is the right thing for quarterbacks to play. I'd rather have a quarterback that was like a state champion wrestler because he's going to have that toughness. He's going to have that like Cam Rising type of mentality, I think.
That moxie, basically.
Running back, track, linebackers, and edge players, basketball. Okay, that's interesting from 7825. I want my linebackers to be wrestlers. I don't want a linebacker that even knows what basketball is.
Mm-hmm. But
that probably does speak to athleticism. DB's track. Of course, DBs, you want track. 9279. It's all about the position they're playing, what sports would complement football. Exactly. That's the point I'm making. I want all of them. Defensive backs and safeties and linebackers, you want wrestlers, tight end. You want skilled position players playing basketball. Tight end as a basketball player, look no further than Caleb Lohner. All right? if you are good at basketball, if you have the body for basketball, in football, you're a tight end. When you talk about how that translates to football, of course, you're just boxing guys out. Ball's in the air. You have the positioning. You know how to, like, put your body between the ball and their body. It's such a simple thing, but it's also not, because some guys can do it and some guys can't. Caleb Lohner played a year of college football, and now he's going to get an NFL opportunity, mostly because his God-given gifts, but also because that cultivation of basketball skill through his life does translate to playing tight end. So, yes.
He's going to be a good blocking tight end. I
don't think he's going to be a good blocking tight end at all. I think he's going to be an amazing receiving tight end. And every once in a while, they'll probably be like, all right, you got to block something. But what you got to block is kicks, meaning you don't have to block other bodies. Caleb is, and I think he's a tough-minded guy. But if you want someone who understands how to leverage their body into a physical blocking situation at his height, basketball doesn't give you that. Basketball gives you box-out positioning. Basketball doesn't give you, I'm going to use my hands and my legs and my hips, and I'm going to drive you from one spot to the next. If you want George Kittle, like George Kittle's probably okay at basketball because he's a really good athlete. George Kittle's a wrestler, okay? Like there's two different types of tight ends, but Caleb Lohner is going to be, I think, a good one. They're going to give him time to develop into a good one.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious how Sean Payton's going to use him. It's probably going to be special teams blocking to box out the guy rushing, red zone threat. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Caleb Lohner there.
If I'm Kyle Whittingham, I go to the track team and hand out scholarships to play receiver. Biggest green flag to me. Yes, as long as I'm going to make him run a shuttle, though. Like, absolutely go to the track team, which I don't think Utah has a men's track team. If they do, it's a club team. But you go to whatever track team. You go to the high school track team. You're down at, I don't know, South Lake Carroll in Texas, and you say, give me your 4 fastest guys. The fastest guy is probably going to LSU or Baylor on a track scholarship, so maybe he doesn't want to come play football for you. The 4th fastest guy, you go to him, and you're just like, how much you weigh, kid? I'm 185. Can you catch a football? I'll figure it out. All right. I'm going to give you a scholarship if you could run a short shuttle. If you could change directions in addition to being fast in a straight line, I'm going to give you a scholarship. Not only do you do that because that athleticism translates, but you do that because you're Kyle Whittingham, and what you do is you develop athletes into players, or you develop potential into results. It is a big-time recruiting month, and there are guys all over the place with these multiple skill sets that you got to dig out, you got to find. There's an interesting article written right now. It was published yesterday in The Athletic by our guy Christopher Kamrani. Maybe we'll get him on to talk about this, about how Idaho is kind of following in the footsteps of the state of Utah in terms of being a recruiting hotbed, a surprising recruiting hotbed. This is now a 10, 12, 15-year-old phenomenon in Utah where at first West Coast teams were kind of figuring out, oh, wow, Utah's got some talent. The Polynesian connection is great, but look what else they have here. And teams started to come in from the West Coast when I was in high school. And now it's everybody. I mean, you talk about Lehigh, you talk about Corner Canyon, you talk about Bingham, you talk about Brighton. They're now putting talent in every conference in the country football-wise. Idaho, like is always the case, shout out Idaho. Idaho is always like 10 or 15 years behind Utah. It's that way in fashion. It's that way in entertainment. Right now in Idaho, the number one movie is whatever the number one movie 15 years ago was in Utah. It's not that pronounced, but now people are realizing, coaches, programs are realizing, like, all right, Idaho, they got some guys. They got some dudes. And it's weird because a lot of them are like the small town guys. It's not just Boise, which is something that I would have thought, yeah, of course. You go to Eagle, Idaho, it's all a bunch of dudes who relocated from Southern California. Their families got sick of the whole COVID situation, and they all moved up there to the Boise suburbs, and that's what we're talking about. And the article by Kamrani points out that, no, it's not the case. There's a bunch of small-town, country-fed, potato-eating, potato-farming types that are now making their name in college football and moving on to the NFL. If any of you watched when Leighton Vander Esch, you remember Leighton Vander Esch?
Yes.
From Boise State and ended up going on to be the Cowboys linebacker. Leighton Vander Esch, I remember reading an article about the town he comes from. He played 8-man football. He was from this tiny little place where they couldn't even field 11-man teams. That's like Kansas, Eastern Colorado, like the heart deep, deep, deep in West Texas. I don't even think in West Texas they do that anymore. And in Idaho, he was playing 8-man football. He lived on a bend in a river, basically. And that's where they're finding some of these guys, including a big-time recruit who's narrowed down his top 4 to include Utah. And my fingers are crossed that we get a chance to see him in Salt Lake City because he's coached by none other than the Utah football legend Jordan Gross. He's from Fruitland, Idaho. And he is Kelvin Obot. That's his name. 6'5", 285 pounds. He's an offensive tackle. And what other sports does he excel in? What other sports is he great at? Well, he has won the state championship in shot put and in discus, which did come in on the text line from at least a person or two that you want people who are good.
Where would you say, like, kickers? You'd say soccer, yeah?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Punters, too?
It feels so reductive to be. No, punters, you don't want soccer. You want Aussie rules football.
Fair.
You want them to come from down under, and you want them to be good at placing a ball on a spin, on the run, in a certain spot, which is what Aussie rules is all about.
You could put rugby in there, too, right?
Rugby, by the way, any position. Give me anybody who played rugby. I wish it were more popular in the United States. It's getting more popular in the United States. Rugby and football translate. Rugby, when you look at, the crest, the logo for a lot of rugby teams, it'll be like, this is Sail Sharks RFU. Or these are the Vodacom Cheetahs, RFC. You know what that is for? Rugby Football Union, Rugby Football Club. Rugby is football. It's just like the European version.
Yeah.
The South African version, the New Zealand version.
I got a rugby ball right behind me, too.
Shout out to the Warriors. All right. 877-353-0700. The other sport you want to see on your high school recruit's resume, let me know what they are. I got to look up the name of the BYU kid. BYU's got a running back kid that I think he's won the shot put state championship like 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row now. He's a running back. You know how freaky that is? When I was in high school.
Is that who it is?
What's that?
McKay Madison is the running back, I think.
Might sound right. It might be it. I'll look it up. But the point is that when you hear about discus and shot put state champions, they're usually offensive line, defensive line types. To have a running back generating that kind of twitch and power, scary.
Yeah, it's McKay Madison. I just looked it up.
All right. That's the kind of guy who's going to be able to push through contact. That's how the shot put thing and the discus thing translate. When I was in high school, Mountain View had a pair of brothers, the Arrhenius brothers. I think they went on to do track and field at BYU. They were not just like state champs. They were the best in the nation at the discus. And at least the one my age, who I think that was Leif, he was huge. I don't even think he played football. Imagine being the football coach, and you got this national champion freak athlete out there, and you're like, dude, are you ever going to come play? I don't think he did. Got to take another quick break here. When we come back, changes to the NBA All-Star game. The kind of changes that we were asking for. We'll get into the details next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Live Night Events presents the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai. That's Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Outdoor concerts right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City's Granary District. Find more details at ESPN700sports.com. Don't mind the construction going on over there. That part of town is exploding. Granary Live is going to be, do the cool kids say lit? Zach? Is that a thing that the kids
Still a thing, yeah.
that the youngs still say?
Still a thing.
All right. It's going to be lit, I think. All right. The NBA made it official. Adam Silver announced that, hey, we're going to do the 2026 All-Star Game, which happens to be in the heart of the Winter Olympics. Same schedule, right? NBA All-Star Game is now going to be USA versus the world. Hell yes. Absolutely yes.
I definitely like it as well.
Players might actually care again about the NBA All-Star Game. Now, let's be realistic. Let's be reasonable. It's not the NHL. The whole vibe is different between NHL players and NBA players. Guys are not necessarily going to have the same, even if I'm hurt or even I think I might get hurt, I'm still going to play through this like Matthew Tkachuk did. But we got to a point in several different leagues, and the NBA maybe the guiltiest of all of them. No. Give the NBA its credit. The NFL was the first league that stopped caring about its All-Star Game because I don't think they ever started caring about its All-Star Game. The Pro Bowl has always been kind of a thing that players were just like, oh, cool, I get an extra $50,000 or whatever. The NBA cared about the All-Star Game in the 90s, and players kind of gradually realized that this was just a long weekend, and they would rather be in Mexico hanging out with the family. I'm sure, just like everyone else does who's got a job that puts you on the road all the time, I'm sure that the families were just like, why do you have to do it again? Everyone else gets to be home. All your teammates get to take their family on a vacation. Why you got to be at the All-Star game? The luster came off for the players, and, of course, as soon as that happens, the luster comes off for the fans. It's been a joke as of late. However, the league is not just accepting that and saying, like, they tried the weird formats where you have team captains picking. They tried mixing in WNBA players. They tried mixing in street ball. They tried doing all these different things. And then the NHL Four Nations Challenge showed them the way. NBA All-Star Game to feature USA versus the world, says Adam Silver. The very day we're on, the lead-in will be Winter Olympic events, Adam Silver told Breakfast Ball this morning. Coming out of the All-Star Game will now be in the afternoon instead of the evening. There will be more Olympic events. So that's kind of wild. You're not going to get a primetime NHL or NBA All-Star Game. Instead, you're going to go back into the Olympics. But USA versus the world, and he's not exactly sure what the format will be yet. Don't get cute. All right? You don't have to do USA versus – well, you could do USA versus Canada. Canada by itself could field the whole team. But just do USA versus the world. That's it. Have them play a regular basketball game. That's all.
It's almost like the Rising Stars game, basically, but with the actual NBA players.
Dude, this is the right move. NBA. Yeah. Congratulations.
Because now the Rising Star game is first year versus second year, I guess freshman versus sophomore, whatever you want to call it now, right? So I think it makes sense. It's great. It's a great change.
February 16th at the Intuit Dome. The Winter Olympics go from February 6th through February 22nd in Italy. So, like he said, right smack dab in the middle of your Olympics is an all-star game. Team USA versus the world. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Make the players care about it. If you have to throw some more money at them to make it financially feasible and motivate them that way, do that. It would be better. The only way you could make it better is if the NBA had enough guys who were all from the same country to take on Team USA. But we saw that in the Olympics, and we're not there yet from an international standpoint. So Team USA versus the world. Don't do anything fancy. Don't make it like a weird captain's picking. There's actually 4 different teams, and each of them play a 3-on-3 game or something like that. Just do it like this for now. Just have a regular size roster of players who were not born in the United States versus players who were born in the United States, and let's see how it shakes out. The world could win. The world probably should be the favorite here. Think of it. If you have a healthy Luka, a healthy Joker, a healthy Wembanyama, and all the Canadian guys, that's enough to beat Team USA.
Can't forget about Jokic. Wait, you said Jokic. Never mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a different player.
Well done, NBA. You know what? You know who's going to have a thought or two on this? Rafael Barlow. He'll join us next. We'll talk about the upcoming NBA draft. We'll talk about the finals starting tomorrow night. More insight on where the Utah Jazz may pick, if they're going to pick at number 5. And, of course, this new format for the NBA All-Star Game. All that next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
there. He's got a little nasty in him as well. How about that driving bucket, Collier?
Utah Jazz block leads to an Isaiah Collier basket. That was against the Nets, courtesy of Smith Entertainment Group Media. Craig Bolerjack, Thurl Bailey on the call. Bowler's going to join us on the show tomorrow, actually. Looking forward to that conversation. Joining us right now on Utah's #1 sports talk, Rafael Barlow. Ready to talk a little. Hey, how you doing, sir? Ready to talk a little NBA draft coming up. What's new?
Man, it's the same every day. Every day is the same, except it's a little bit busier around this time, but it's a great time for me.
Before we get into any draft stuff, we were just talking about the announced change. The NBA All-Star Game in 2026 is going to go to a USA versus the World format. Now, beyond that, the format has not been decided, according to Adam Silver. Are they going to just give it to us like they should and have it be players from the USA, players from the world in a real basketball game, not any weird 3-on-3 teams change every quarter kind of thing? Can we just get a real game here, Rafael?
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I really do. The first thing that came to my mind was, even though I know he's injured and he's not going to play All-Star Weekend, is what team would Kyrie Irving be on if he were in that situation? Because he was born in Australia. And when the NBA puts out its list of international players every year, his name is always included as an international guy because he was born in Australia. So that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay, so how you get to make the decision, all right? How do you qualify for international? Like, because there are guys that were born on military bases overseas. There were guys, there's all these different scenarios. If you're born in a different country, but you're an American citizen, you were raised by American parents, you spent your school and your formative years in the United States, you got to be Team USA, right? Or what would be the line where you could qualify for the world team in Rafael Barlow's world?
Ooh, I don't know, because you have a lot of Canadians, and even though, to me, this may sound stupid, but Canada is in North America. So if it's America versus the world,
well, it's USA versus the world. So let's
USA versus the world.
We'll cut off like that. Honestly, if you take the world players, and that it does include a bunch of those Canadian stars, like I think the world team is the favorite here. If it's I'm doing the early odds.
I think it all depends on who really wants to play. Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic haven't seemed to really care about all-star games, and they barely shoot in those games. And so I think it all will boil down to if guys really want to play. And my one knock on All-Star Weekend, as I've been to quite a few of them, is that the stars have so many things on their plate, so many appearances, that all the sponsors and their endorsers have them pulled in different ways, that by Sunday they're just like, let's get this over. And I know the fans don't like it, but I think in years past, when the game was a little bit more competitive, there was less things on players' plates.
Well, if that's the trade-off, give me less things on players' plates. Give me fewer sponsorship obligations. I don't care about the interviews. I want to see him playing and actually caring.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to change. I was at All-Star Weekend in San Francisco, and I was at an Adidas event, and then Anthony Edwards showed up, and of course he wants to be there. Adidas is paying him a lot of money, but he's there. He's signing shoes, and he's got sneaker releases. I mean, there's so many things involving All-Star Weekend, but the partners pay a lot of money to work with the NBA. So from your trading card companies to shoes and so on, I don't know what the fair trade-off would be.
That's fair. I'll let smarter people than myself figure it out. I just hope we get a real game and there's a little bit more emotional investment from the players because of the new format. But to be determined, I guess.
Yep.
All right. Tom Thibodeau fired yesterday. What do you think?
It's crazy. I mean, I've been a Tibbs supporter for years. He's won games, hasn't been able to get to the finals, but it just shows you how crazy the NBA world is. From guys that have won championships and getting fired a couple years later, and Tibbs getting fired, 2 or 3 days after going to the conference finals, playing with, and Cat wasn't healthy. I mean, the NBA landscape is crazy, but Tyronn Lue has to have the best job in the NBA. He hasn't been past the second round, and I think since 2021, and he's the third highest paid coach, and guys that have gone further and led teams to the finals and championships have been fired. So if I'm Ty Lue, I have to love my job with the Clippers.
Well, if you're looking to maybe fill the shoes of Thibodeau in New York, how appealing is this job? Because now you've got a fan base that was long-suffering but has had more success recently, and now expects you to be at least in the Eastern Conference Finals and get them further than that. Like, I realize it's New York. You get to coach at the Mecca. It's the Knicks, whatever. But you're going into a place that expectations have never been realistic, and now they're more unrealistic than ever.
You want my honest answer?
Yeah.
Sign me up. Tibbs is getting $30 million to not coach. So the fans aren't going to be realistic, and you know as an NBA coach, you're going to get a job and you're going to be replaced. You get a chance to coach in New York, big fan base, your team is close. Worst case scenario, you sign a 5-year, $30, $25 million deal, and you're good for life. But you're a hero if you win. So it's a win-win. It's a win-win situation for whoever gets the job. Because if you win one championship in New York, you are the man and to the largest fan base, or one of the largest fan bases in the world.
You know, this is the perspective I needed, because you're absolutely right. If the downside for the job is you get fired after 1 year and they pay you $25 million to go away, that's not a real significant downside. I mean, my pride could survive that.
Yeah, definitely. But it's a tough job. I mean, the NBA is just so hard on coaches. I think most coaches understand coming into the job that you're going to get fired, and you just can end up getting fired for things that are out of your control. But I think you don't get to that level without being a competitor, without having the resume. So I think every coach will look at it as worth a shot, because the team is close. And then with all the parity in the NBA, you're just a few things falling in place to being a champion, or at least making it to the finals.
The Phoenix Suns have hired Jordan Ott as their next head coach. What do you think of the hire? What do you think of him?
I don't know much about him, honestly. I know that he was with the Cavaliers, and they had a great year. It to me just sounds like a sign of we're rebuilding. We're trying something different. I know a lot of people complain about the NBA recycling the same coaches over and over again. So this is a new face, and he's getting an opportunity. He already has a good player in Devin Booker on the roster. And like I said, there's so much parity in the NBA. You get a couple things that fall into place in your favor, you could end up, having a deep playoff run. So I think Phoenix has to figure out the Durant situation first. But he should be able to inherit a team that should make the playoffs. On paper, they look like they should have been a playoff team this past season. But it's not a bad place to start your career.
Where do you think Kevin Durant ends up ultimately?
Oh, man. That's tough. You hear the rumors about Houston. I've heard Dallas. I've heard Minnesota. I don't know. I wonder what the asking price is. I read that the asking price has been lowered. Again, I don't know how valid that is. Obviously, he's probably going to go to a team that is a winner, that feels like he could be one piece away. I really can't put my finger on it. There's a part of me that would not be surprised if he ends up staying in Phoenix because they can't get the offer that they want for him, just like they couldn't at the All-Star break. At the trade deadline.
Does he want to go somewhere knowing, hey, I'm number 2 or number 3? Because I don't – obviously we don't get to talk to Kevin Durant, and even if you do, you don't know if you're getting, the real truth serum answer. But, is he a guy that at this age is ready to now be like, all right, I'll be the supporting scorer. I mean, he's still a great player, but he doesn't feel to me like a guy who's MVP caliber. I'm the lead star on a contender.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think he understands that wherever he goes, they want him to put them over the top. May not necessarily be their go-to option, but whatever team that he goes to, you imagine is going to be a good team already that has their foundation pieces in place, and his job is just to get them over the top. So I think he'd be fine with that. But I think by default, he still ends up being their leading scorer because he's that good, he's that efficient, and he doesn't need a lot of shots to get 25 points per game.
Rafael Barlow's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. You can hear him on NBA Big Board Global Scouting. We'll get to this NBA draft here in just a second. We're a day away from the finals starting. A lot of people are down on the Pacers' chances. Where do you stand on the ability for Tyrese Halliburton and company to overcome the machine that is OKC?
If this playoff hasn't taught us anything, then you haven't been watching. You just can't doubt the Pacers. They were not the favorite coming in. Tyrese Halliburton has defied odds his whole career. I mean, we're talking about a guy that people were laughing at just a few months ago because he couldn't find minutes on the Olympic team. I think it's going to be a good series. I love the parity. Even though dynasties kind of sold the NBA, kind of made it what it is. But I just love the fact that we have two smaller market teams that are competing for the championship. And I think that the Pacers have a legitimate chance of winning. I mean, they play fast. They have just a bunch of guys that are kind of unheralded in a sense. Like Miles Turner is a lot better than he's been given credit for. Pascal Siakam, I mean, he's won. Toronto, he's definitely has this underdog chip on his shoulders. He's a tough matchup. So I think it could be a really good finals. I think it could go 6 or 7 games.
Why did they give Pascal Siakam the conference finals MVP award?
I think it's because Halliburton had a rough game 5, if I'm not mistaken, and Siakam led the Pacers in scoring. I could be wrong, but I know Halliburton was first in the majority of the major statistical categories. But that's the only thing I can think of. I
mean, it's not like that award matters all that much to either of them, but it just Halliburton is the reason they're there. Halliburton is so I don't know. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, so let's get to the Utah Jazz here. They've hired a new president of basketball operations, Austin Ainge. And, it's an insular little community here. Everyone's, you got to be careful what you say, careful how you talk, careful questions you ask, whatever. Give me your thoughts on Austin Ainge. We know there's nepotism in the hire. That doesn't bother me all that much because there's nepotism all over sports. But give me your thoughts on this hire and the fact that he went from assistant GM to team president.
Well, if his last name wasn't Ainge, and he came from the Celtics, I think people will be talking about the job that he did with Boston and how he played a big role in bringing in a championship. So that is something that I really value. But, of course, like I mentioned, his last name is Ainge. People are always going to think of it as nepotism. But I just give him a clean slate. Just give him an opportunity to show what he's capable of because – he has been around a franchise that has been really successful the last few years. Just won one championship, but it was a championship that was won with players that they drafted, a lot of homegrown talent. So just give him a fair opportunity and then not pay attention to the last name is what I would say.
He said they're not going to tank. And then he kind of like clarified and said, well, we're going to let whatever group we end up with play hard and fight till the end. Does that mean that the plan is a more dignified tank and they're just going to be like, we just don't have the players to win, which, of course, would be him potentially moving on from the veterans and, the all-star caliber like Lauri Markkanen?
That was a very interesting quote, and I think Utah's in a really, really, really tough situation simply because on one hand, you saw what tanking and manipulating the minutes got them this year. They had the best odds, and I don't want to, rehash the bad memories, but they ended up with the 5th pick this year. So I understand where it's like, well, tanking doesn't always work. But there's a guy that's going to play about 50 miles from the Delta Center that is absolutely worth tanking for in A.J. Devasta. And then there's Darren Peterson and Cameron Boozer. So the 2026 class is going to be good, especially if you end up with a top 3 pick. So that's why the comment was interesting to me. But I understand you can't come out the gates and say, hey, we're going to tank again. And so we're aiming for the number 1 pick. So I think that they're going to have to make some moves. I don't know if Markkanen is the guy that's going to be moved, but it seems like it just makes sense to move on from either Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton, especially if they believe that Isaiah Collier is their point guard of the future. And if that means Keontae George is coming off the bench, then you don't need too many undersized 6 men or, you know what I mean? Like too many guys that are similar and have overlapping skill sets.
Rafael Barlow for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Now let's talk about the approaching draft. The Utah Jazz, as you already highlighted, it didn't really work out from the tanking perspective. Cooper Flagg is going to end up in Dallas, and we think that Dylan Harper maybe ends up in San Antonio. And then the consensus falls apart. This is something you and I have already talked about, but there's always new information, right? These guys are continuing to do their workouts, and there's interviews and there's investigation. Everyone this time of year is trying to find a reason to draft a guy and trying to find a reason not to draft a guy. So that 3 through 7 could be any mix of, kind of these familiar names. Are you hearing anything new on what makes the most sense at 5?
No, I think the Jazz are actually in a good situation. I mean, historically, if you go back and look at past drafts, how often does the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd pick become all-stars? You may get 1 out of the 3. A good year, you get 2 out of the 3. So sometimes it may be best to fall outside of that top 3. So with that being said, I think the way the draft is going to shake out is possibly someone like Trey Johnson could fall to Utah at 5. That would be an excellent pick, in my opinion. But maybe if Ace Bailey falls. I mean, I've heard some people that think that if he does not go 3 to Philly, then it could be a situation where he just continues to drop. And he's a very intriguing long-term prospect. So that could be a good situation for Utah. So I think they're in a good situation, maybe not the one that you hoped for, but I do think that there is someone available at 5 that could end up being a franchise guy and someone that could end up outplaying somebody that is selected at 2 or 3.
There's tons of examples, even in Jazz basketball history. There's a lot of examples of guys that were obviously not number 1 overall picks or number 2 or number 3 who ended up being great players for this organization. I mean, the best great players recently for this organization have not been guys taken in that top 3. And, it's an inexact science in every sport, in every draft. But this is your life. This is you're in on this. So, like, what are you looking for? What should we be looking for at 5, at 10, at 27 that, like, all right, that guy is going to outperform his draft position?
I think for Utah, they're in a situation where they've drafted players recently who are probably the best player available. I think at 5, you swing for the fences. You swing for the guy that you say, this guy has the best long-term upside. This guy has the best potential to be a superstar. You may get it at 5. You never know. I mean, like you mentioned, who thought that Rudy Gobert would be a multi-time All-Star? Donovan Mitchell wasn't someone that people had super high expectations coming in. And I was at some of the games in Utah his rookie year during that playoff series where he absolutely just turned into a star. So you never know, but I think you have to go with an aggressive scorer. I feel like Cody Williams was really passive last year, And so you have to go with someone that probably has a totally different mindset, someone that is really, really assertive, and someone that you think has star potential.
Who's your favorite young player on the Jazz roster now that you're like, okay, I want to pair whatever we got with this individual?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I am a little biased. I live in the Dallas area, so I've been watching Keontae George since he was an elementary schooler. So I've seen a lot of him. I like Keontae, but I really like Isaiah Collier also. I love the fact that he's a big guard. He's really assertive and really aggressive, loves to get downhill. He's unselfish. I thought that he should have went higher than where he went in last year's draft, so he was an absolute steal for Utah. I just think that if he gets a jump shot and he becomes a little bit more respectable as a shooter, it's going to open up his passing. And for guys that are unselfish and can get 2 feet in the paint and draw 2 defenders, that's the type of player that other players would like to play with. So it's between those two. I mean, I know Markkanen is still pretty young, and he's an exciting player, at least for me. But I would say those two as far as the young guys.
Okay, circling back to the finals before we let you go, you already mentioned it's smaller market teams vying for a championship. You know, a lot of people have started to call this kind of the parity era in the NBA because largely because, you know, OKC is the favorite to win a championship here. Are the Utah Jazz going to be able to participate in this before a new CBA closes that window, or before, you know, the NBA decides like, these big market teams, we need to see the Knicks and the Lakers back in the finals? Is this going to be a trend that can continue long enough for us to enjoy it in Salt Lake City?
I honestly, and I'm not just saying this because, you know, I'm on a Utah Jazz a Utah Jazz station, but I do think that a guy like AJ DeBamsta or Darren Peterson, I think landing one of those guys could be a franchise changer. So obviously that's 2026. You need a few things to fall in place for that to happen. But I do think if they are able to get a good pick, a good player at 5, but still not like a playoff team, and then you strike gold next year, I think that could be a pretty quick turnaround.
In the Dallas area, what is the buzz like for Flag? Or is it just, you know, quieted until it actually happens?
No, the buzz is high. The buzz is high, and this fan base is excited again. It was a rough last few months, especially for me. I go to all the Mavericks home games, and it was just weird seeing the boos and the Fire Nico chants and the fan base so just distraught. And so Cooper brings some hope, and obviously it's good for business because a lot of those season ticket holders that claimed that they were not coming back to Mavs games have renewed their tickets. So it was a big win we haven't seen it on the court, but it was a big win off the court for Dallas.
Is it enough to wash out the bad feelings of the Luka trade?
Short term, yeah. Short term, I mean, people are excited. Obviously, he has to perform and he has big shoes to fill. But right now, people are just excited about Cooper Flag. And like I said, there's some buzz and some excitement around the city as far as the draft, which is good, which is really, really good. The city needed it. So I think short term, it has it's probably not a better situation for the team as far as just getting people to forget about the trade. But, yeah, like I said, short term I think is good. But only time will tell. Like I said, he has huge, huge shoes to fill because Luka was absolutely loved and adored here in Dallas.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch how it all plays out. Enjoy the finals, Raphael, and we'll talk again soon.
Yep, anytime. Let me know. Thanks again.
Raphael Barlow, NBA draft consultant, host of NBA Big Board. Really, really always dialed in and great on not only the prospects for this draft, next year, the rest of the NBA. Big thanks to Raphael Barlow for joining us. All right, we got a junk mail alert, another official Utah football release from our guy, Keeler McJunkin. Give you the junk mail update next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Winding down here on a hump day. Spence Checketts and the drive coming up next. Little update from the Utah football official account. Assistant Athletic Director for Strategic Communications, Keeler McJunkin, our guy up there on the hill now. You probably weren't overly worried about this, but it is news nonetheless. The 2028 Utah football schedule, the non-conference slate has been completed. A matchup with the University of Nevada. Utah will host the Wolfpack at Rice-Eccles Stadium September 9th to complete the 2028 non-conference slate. So August 31st of 2028 will be Utah Tech coming to Rice-Eccles Stadium. September 9th will be Nevada. That's the new game that was put on the schedule. And then September 16th, this is a cool one. Put it on the calendar maybe as a road game you want to go to. Camp Randall Stadium at Wisconsin. Utah at Wisconsin Badgers. That's a fun one. It's a place I want to go. So a little trip to Madison maybe. I think the best way to get there is Salt Lake to Chicago. And then from there, maybe Milwaukee. I know that one of our local airlines has the small regional flights. Shout out SkyWest. What's up? Anyway, 2028 Nevada now on the non-conference slate. I imagine if you are an athletic director, if you're a university president, if you're somebody working in the athletic department and especially in the football programs, scheduling things out is probably a weird vibe right now. You're probably wondering whether or not these slates, these non-conference games will even be played in the same context at all. Whether or not you're going to be in the same conference, whether or not the same conferences are going to exist in college football, whether or not there's going to be some type of shake-up between now and then that renders your program either more relevant or less relevant. Got to be a really wild time. Nevada on the schedule now. Young Zach, if you can tell me the historic record between Utah and Nevada without looking it up, I'll give you 100 James Peterson bonus points.
I have no idea, honestly.
I didn't expect you to have any idea. No one's going to get this answer right. But take it to the water cooler at work. It's actually shocking to me. You live right next door, right? Nevada is one state over. Utah is 4-5-1 all time against Nevada. So you don't even have a winning record against the Wolfpack, the University of Nevada. The last time these two teams met, if you can get that one, Zach, I'll give you 25 James Peterson bonus points. The last time Utah played UNR.
Ooh, I'm going to have to guess on this one.
Yeah, of course it's going to be a guess. I don't expect you to actually know it. When do you think it was?
I'm going to say like 2004?
It was 1945.
Oh, my gosh. I am way off.
80 years ago was the last time these two teams faced off. So by the time this game is actually played, it will have been 83 years. Well, I guess just under 83 years, because September 29th, 1945, and then the next matchup is September 9th, 2028. So just under 83 years between meetings.
Wow.
You could drive to Reno.
It's like 8 hours, but still, it's a decent drive.
It's a long drive, but still, you could get there. Anyway, so that's fun. It's a cool little game being added, if it actually gets played. As long as we're talking college football, we have discussed over the weeks that the House versus NCAA settlement keeps getting pushed back. We are now we are less than 90 days away. We're 87 days away from Utah football kicking off. We are 75 days away from when teams are getting back into camp. Less than that. We're 60 days away from teams getting back into camp. And The House settlement was supposed to have a structure in place for revenue sharing payments from the universities to the players in time for this football season. They were at least supposed to know, at least supposed to point it out. No ink is dry. No signatures have been placed on paper yet. This House settlement is incomplete. And you're getting to a point where you're less than 3 months away from when, if you're a player who's on a roster somewhere and you don't have significant NIL opportunities, you're not making a bunch of money as a college football player, college basketball player, you're looking at the House settlement and you're going, all right, well, how much am I going to get?
Right.
And when am I going to get it?
Especially when you're 80 days from week 0.
You're looking at it and you're just like, guys, is this happening? Now, if you're a player who does receive significant NIL opportunities, you are probably looking at it from a different perspective. And this is one of the many problems with the House settlement is that two players who might be sharing an apartment. I mean, you literally could be roommates. It's not just star players who are friends with star players on the team, right? The star players on the team are buddies with the random walk-on or the dude who got the scholarship but never really developed into anything. Like, those guys oftentimes on these teams are close. That's the case at BYU. That's the case at Utah. It's the case at Utah State right now. So a dude who's getting $1 million worth of NIL money could very well be locker next door in the locker room.
Neighbors.
To a guy who's like, I don't have NIL money, or I'm getting the bare minimum of NIL money. Now, if you're Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, you're probably looking at this House settlement and going, well, I hope this doesn't limit my money, because right now you're handsomely compensated. If you're Devin Dampier, you're looking at it, you're just like, I hope that this, whatever comes out here, doesn't eliminate the ability for me to maximize my earning potential. Because who knows if Devin Dampier, he doesn't actually have he doesn't have the physical profile of a stereotypical NFL quarterback. So now the window is open. He's making money now. If this House settlement comes out and they attempt at least to say, all right, we're doing a clearinghouse here. You can only make this much money in NIL, and we're going to add to that the $100,000 from the school, $50,000 from the school, whatever it's going to be. You're looking at it, you're going like, wait. That's a pay cut for me. I'm the starting quarterback. That's a pay cut for me. I'm the projected All-American tackle. That's a pay cut for me. I'm the guy who's supposed to be a first-round NFL draft pick. There's a lot of other guys on the team. The majority of the other guys on the team are looking at it and going like, oh, sweet. I don't have cash coming in. Now I'm going to get a nice little chunk of change. I'm getting cash from this settlement. So you could be – I mean, there are teammates, locker roommates, guys that are right next to each other that speak every single day, play video games together, ride to practice and workouts together, that are hoping for different outcomes on this House settlement. I don't want something that earns my that limits my earning potential, is the thought process for one. The guy in the passenger seat is saying, man, I hope that it actually finally brings me some money.
Yeah.
One of the many reasons why it's so problematic putting this cap on things, if that's what the House settlement eventually ends up doing.
Yeah, and like players want to maximize the benefit that they're getting, and they don't want to lose that benefit, which can impact a player in some way and make them want to like transfer to a different school and where they can get more money.
What's proposed in the House settlement is that it becomes uniform across the board, right? And so you transferring to another school won't help you, because if there's a salary cap, which is one of the many, many things that this is trying to do, then you could go to Alabama, and Alabama is going to give you $100,000 from the school, and they're going to cap you at $500,000 of earnings or whatever. And, I guess at Alabama, they'll just go back to doing things with bags of cash under your car when you walk to it. But at the end of the day, this is a really interesting situation that we're coming up on the deadline, like the true deadline. We thought this was going to be in place already, at least by July. It does not feel like that's going to be the case. And I'm fascinated by the dynamic of if we went and we took a poll up on the Hill, University of Utah football players, all right? How many of you hope that the House versus NCAA settlement check comes in now. And you might have to remind them that, like, if that check comes in, it might mean that your earning potential is now capped by a new set of rules. I wonder how many guys say, yeah, I want that, and how many guys say, no, don't do that. Don't try to put any limitations on me. And if you do put limitations on me, my lawyer's going to have something to say about it, which is, again, one of the myriad issues that this whole thing has. Fascinating, fascinating time in college football right now. That's a decision that needs to be made sooner than later. Another decision that needs to be made, although you have until December to do it, so you got like a 6-month runway here. But as media days happen, and as they've already done like the conference business days, and then the conference media days are going to be happening where coaches and players go and speak to the media. And they're all going to be asked about this at some level, especially in the SEC and in the Big Ten. And Ryan Day is the latest Big Ten coach to reject the 5+11 model of an expanded college football playoff, which is officially endorsed by Brett Yormark in the Big 12. So I guess here in Big 12 country, we should probably get on board with that. But the stance of SEC coaches and Big Ten coaches has been split on this. Ryan Day says, let's go with the 4-team automatic qualifier for the Big 12. For the Big Ten. Ryan Day says, and of course, he's coming off a national championship season that was this close to being a season in which he got fired. Look at that. On the same day, we're talking about Tom Thibodeau, who got so close but got fired because he didn't get close enough. And we're talking about Ryan Day, who's the opposite side of that coin, who was on an equal hot seat or under equal pressure, except instead of coming up short, he made it happen. Instead of getting fired, he gets the extension and the raise. And that's just how thin the margin for error is when you're the New York Knicks coach or the Ohio State Buckeyes coach. Random aside there. But after winning the college football playoff, the 12-team college football playoff, getting the national title, Ryan Day is now among those who think, well, an expanded college football playoff that includes 4 of my conference's teams automatically, plus potential for more than that, is absolutely the way to go. Ryan Day says we deserve to have 4 teams in the Big Ten. We're in the Big Ten. We have 18 teams and some of the best programs in the country. I feel like we deserve at least 4 automatic qualifiers. You know what, Ryan? Let's make it 10.
Yeah.
You got 18 teams. Let's get more than half of them in. Let's go. Why cap it at 4? The SEC is not as good as you guys. You've won the last couple of national championships. Don't share equally. Big Ten. Let's go. Take what you want, Ryan Day. Oregon, Washington, USC. I have to say UCLA because they were also added, but like they're not going to be a national football power ever. Plus all the Big Ten teams, including the Penn States, Ohio States, Michigans. Wisconsin is good. Iowa's good. The Big 12 doesn't have that depth of talent. The Big 12 doesn't have that depth of reputation. The SEC does. The Big 10 does. They get to decide what happens. But making it an automatic qualifier thing just allows for controversy. I don't even understand why the SEC and the Big Ten want to make it a bare minimum and automatic. You're going to get 4 teams in as an SEC or a Big Ten if you just do a 16-team playoff with no prerequisites. You're going to get 4 teams in and probably more.
Yeah.
When you mandate that it has to be 4, it opens up the criticism. It opens up the possibility of like, hey, what if you have a really down year as a conference and there's not 4 deserving teams? You're shoehorning a random Iowa team in there that in that particular year, in 2027, you only deserve 3. In 2025, 2026, 2028, 2029, 2035, you're going to have at least 4. You can't just say, all right, only our conference champion is an automatic qualifier. Knowing exactly where the power structure exists, what the dynamic is, how the finances play out, It's silly to demand at least 4 mandated automatic. You're going to get 4 anyway. Your potential for more than 4 is a damn near guarantee. And in the freak years where you have an outlier of a conference that actually doesn't earn its spot for those top 4, let Boise State and Arizona State and Utah and BYU and Tulsa and whoever else have their 1 year.
Yeah.
It'll only happen once every 20 years.
I mean, even Indiana got in this last year.
Okay, but here's the thing. Indiana got in because Indiana played its way into that.
Exactly.
Not because there was an automatic qualifier. If Indiana can play its way in, then anybody in the Big Ten can play their way in. Indiana is a basketball school. Nobody ever thought we would see Indiana in a college football playoff. I can say that with great confidence. There's not an individual when we went from a BCS system to a playoff system, when we went from 4 teams to 12 teams, when we go from 12 teams to 16, there was not anybody who was thinking about, well, just wait and see what happens when Indiana makes it. You were thinking about Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, maybe Michigan State, maybe Iowa, Wisconsin. You could probably give a little bit of love to Purdue even before you started even thinking about Indiana being a factor. You don't need guarantees, Big Ten Conference. You don't need guarantees, SEC Conference, because of all the things you already have. You already have it all. You already have all the money. You already have all the fan support. You already have all the television network support. You have the best players in your backyard. You don't need the guarantees on top of that. And the guarantees on top of that actually don't make as much sense as you think they do.
No,
because it opens you up for criticism, which I know you don't care about. If and when the slim possibility that you, as an 18-team conference, find a way to collectively underperform to the level that you don't, quote-unquote, deserve 4 spots, but you automatically get them, then people are going to be like, why do you don't deserve it? There's no other scenario in which people are going to tell you that the Big Ten doesn't deserve something in football. Right. They are the king conference right now. The SEC is right there on their level. I guess this year, last year, maybe slightly behind. But those two are the Rams butting heads at the top of the mountain, and everyone else is just waiting to see what happens. You don't need automatic qualifiers. I've said this 100 different times. I'll keep saying it 100 more. It actually doesn't make as much sense even as these leagues think it does.
Yeah, I mean, you had four teams last year get in. That's like playing into playoffs is way better than having an automatic qualifier for.
And they're going 16 teams. You know what? I'm changing my whole stance on this.
Okay.
This is happening on the Sean O'Connell Show. We're 15 minutes away from the end of the show on Wednesday, June 4th. I'm shifting my stance on automatic qualifiers for the college football playoff. Yes, give the SEC and the Big Ten automatic qualifiers in a 16-team expanded college football playoff, only if it's a 16-teamer, and cap them at 4 teams. They're guaranteed 4. They don't get more than 4. They get at least 4. If they're so insistent on 4 guaranteed bids, give them exactly that. You get 4.
Yeah.
You don't get 5. You can't have 6. You get 4. Because guess what happens then? The same thing you saw this last year, where LSU's complaining and Ole Miss is complaining, and people are just like, well, what about us? No. You guys insisted that you wanted 4 teams, so we're giving you 4 and only 4.
So was that half the bracket filled out versus?
There it is.
Yeah.
Makes it easy on everyone else. You got half the bracket already.
And then whatever other teams are ranked through that.
Well, you only have 4 power conferences now, so you got that. That's going to give you 2 bids from the Big 12 at least, probably 3.
Some from the ACC.
3 bids from the ACC, Notre Dame, and Boise State. Notre Dame and whoever the at-large is there.
Yeah.
We solved the problem. Done deal. You can have your 4, but you only get 4. One last break on the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll come back with some crosstalk. Closing out the show in 13 minutes. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. If you didn't catch the show live today, you could always find us in the on-demand section of our ESPN 700 app. You can tell your smart speaker to play ESPN 700. You can watch us on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're available there as well. We are everywhere. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show today. Up next is The Drive with Spence Checketts. Spence, I have good news for you, but I also have bad news for you.
Can we do bad first, good second?
I kind of have to do good then bad.
All right, fair enough. Go ahead.
In order to make my point.
Go ahead.
The good news is that you are either the third or fourth best radio show in America.
Okay.
The bad news is you're fired also.
Wow. I missed an organizational shift over the last 24 hours. What happened?
That's what happened to Tom Thibodeau.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true. I'm old enough to remember when you were good at your job, you got to keep it in pro basketball. Taylor Jenkins, let's see, Michael Malone, Mike Budenholzer. So here's a wild thing that I just read. The Suns just hired Jared Ott to be their head coach. It's Devin Booker's 7th coach with the Suns. It's his 7th coach.
I think it's his 8th.
Either way, 7th or 8th, it's still
in 11
wild.
Years.
That is wild to consider that Devin Booker has had either 7 or 8 head coaches. I think I read it was the 7th non-interim coach, so maybe 8 overall.
You're probably right on that, yeah.
Still, it's wild. Yeah, once upon a time when you were good at your job, you could keep it. It kind of makes you nervous. It's a players' league now, man. It just is.
Shout out Devin Booker for having the coolest modern signature shoe.
You like Book's shoe?
I like the Book shoe.
Yeah, it's nice.
Most people don't have good signature shoes.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't even have signature shoes. But Devin's, I like Booker's shoe. I like Devin Booker. Not just as a player, but seems like a guy that would be fun to hang out with.
Yeah, it seems like that'd be the case.
Yeah, it's just become such a players' league, and the money is so big. And from an ownership or front office perspective, like the Knicks can't do anything with Cat's money right now. And so if it's true that Cat behind the scenes for the second time was like, I don't want to play for that guy anymore, I wouldn't be stunned if this really was player-driven with the New York Knicks.
And then you go, all right, we got rid of this guy who's pretty good at the job.
Mm-hmm.
We have someone who's better. Who is that? Who's it going to be?
Well,
Johnny Bryant.
Yeah, the rumors, I will tell you what. So I personally really like Johnny, and Johnny's always been really good to me. When he was here, we had a really good relationship. I, of course, sent him a text and, of course, haven't heard back about whether or not that's something he'd be interested in. I think the fact that the Suns passed him over indicates maybe Johnny thinks he has a shot. People in New York are pontificating on Ime Udoka, but he has a job with Houston. And I don't know, there's a hubris involved with the Knicks, their ownership and their front office, where they don't do any media ever. And they just believe that they can poach anybody because everybody would want to be the head coach of the Knicks. But, ultimately, we'll see how it plays out. I would love to see Jeff Van Gundy get that job again. I don't think Jeff would work for the owner again, though. He already's worked for Jim Dolan once. And if you juxtapose it to what Ryan has decided to do with the Jazz, only time will tell to see if this works. And only time will tell if these guys stick around for a while. But the Jazz organizationally appear to be very strong right now, with a front office that's in place and a head coach that's really good that isn't going anywhere for a while. It's they're in a great spot everywhere outside of the roster. They're in a great spot everywhere outside of the actual product on the court. So now that's obviously first priority moving forward.
If you're the head coach of the New York Knicks, where do you live?
Well, I would live in Westchester.
Okay.
Certainly, if you have a family, you do not want to. I don't think you want to live in Manhattan. I mean, when you're making that kind of money, you can live in Manhattan comfortably.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we lived in Southern Connecticut, and my father worked there for 12 years, and he just commuted every day. A lot of the Knicks players and front office people and coaches that have families do end up in Southern Connecticut or like Scarsdale, New York. Westchester is really popular, and there are plenty of Knicks players. I would say all the Knicks players that are single do live in Manhattan. And if I was a single Knicks player, I would live in Manhattan too.
You probably have to pay me more than even some of those guys are making to live in Manhattan. But
you can get by on Cat's $36 million a year this year.
I just can't stand Manhattan. You know what I mean?
Like all parts of it?
Well, only the parts that I've been to a lot.
Yeah.
Like if they were like, we'll pay you $50 million, but you have to live near the Garden, I'd be like, make it 60.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to live near the Garden, but there's some really like the Village
That's
or
why I'm asking
Soho
you
or
because
Brooklyn.
like this is you grew up in these environments.
Yeah,
I've only been out there. I mean, it's many times now to call fights and stuff, but it's like every time I'm just like, how do people live city life? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the Upper East Side with that kind of money. You can live anywhere. But no, I would not want to live centrally located by the Garden. That's not the spot at all.
The old New Yorker Hotel. You ever been in that place?
I have not. I've driven by it.
It is awesome.
Is that usually where you stay?
Well, we did for like the first 3 years that the PFL would go out there, and finally, people were just like, "We've graduated beyond this. This place is terrifying.
Yeah.
Get us out of here."
Yeah, the Village rules. I mean, it's right by NYU. It's not overly crowded. You know, you don't feel like you're living in the midst of 13 million people. I would probably either do Village or Soho. A lot of people love Brooklyn because it's been gentrified. I'm not a huge Brooklyn guy. I'm not that hip.
Okay.
I'm hip enough, but I'm not that hip. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to make $40-50 million a year, it really doesn't matter. You can figure it out.
Okay.
You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Even in like Dana Point, which is where I'm going to live someday.
Yeah?
Oh, love it.
You love Dana Point, California?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I love Southern California as long as you're south of L.A. Like, let's take me down Orange County and we're good.
I feel betrayed because I thought that we had decided on a compound on the North Shore.
Oh, that's still happening. That's the ultimate goal.
You're going to commute from Dana Point to the North Shore?
Yeah, I got things in the works, man. I got things in the works.
All right, what's coming up on the show today?
We'll do NBA Finals preview. We have Neil Smith for a comprehensive Stanley Cup Final preview. The Stanley Cup Final last year was remarkable. Florida wins 3, Edmonton wins 3, Florida gets Game 7. So we'll preview Stanley Cup. We'll preview NBA Finals. A couple of thoughts on Austin Ainge went on our guy JP Chunga's Jazz podcast. So I listened to that. And JP's a smart interviewer, so asked him to elaborate on the lack of tanking strategy as a result of an indelicate question that was asked of him by some local media guy that clearly was trying to cause problems. So we'll unpack a little bit more of that. Josh Furlong stops by. We'll do some Utah football and some Utah hoops.
Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.